Alexei, welcome. I'll let you get set up here. It's a pleasure to have you on here, though.
Let me see. 1 second.
Yeah, take your time. You've done a bunch of these already, so I'll edit all of this afterwards, and then we'll hop in whenever it works.
Oh, no worries. Let me just. I'm surprised the video didn't start. There we go.
Perfect. How's it going, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good to see you. I got all your books here. I appreciate you sending them my way.
Yeah. I'll be sending you the hard copy very soon.
Awesome, awesome, man. I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
it. And is that just a compilation of those four issues plus the physics of love?
It does not have the physics of love, but what it
Okay,
does have is a book of poetry.
awesome.
Yeah, and then also philosophical discussions.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a whole. I might. Let me see. Right here. This is the book of poetry by itself called Lucius.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the philosophical discussions are from like an original write I did in 2014.
I love how in the physics of love you started pushing your own terminology. Lucius is your name for what all the fields mixed together.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lucius is like my nickname from high school, actually, which is
Okay.
pretty wild, right? But then as I started writing these books and people started basically giving me feedback, they're saying that a man named Monroe had a near death experience, right? Where like beings basically told him that higher dimensional beings use this energy called the Lush, right? And so they started giving me feedback. They were like, Lucius Labs, you don't know about the Lush? And I was like, I am Lucius. What are you talking about? Kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
So that's like a
amazing.
huge synchronicity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's super wild to me. Like the more I keep writing, the more synchronicities exist.
Yeah. And we'll get in that once we start recording. It's I had kind of which brought me to this point now is I had an experience 10 months ago and I met with a rabbi a couple months ago with some other business ventures and I told him I was like, "Rabbi, ever since that moment 10 months ago, I can't even begin to describe to you how many synchronicity moments have happened. Like me and you sitting together here, Rabbi, and how I met him is crazy through five different people by getting invited to one event. It's just amazing how things work once you begin to you describe this in the physics of love. Once you begin to prepare, and I know Eckhart Tolle kind of describes this, prepare yourself to receive it, right? Because we always want to add things in, but you kind of have to remove the delusions in order to
Right.
receive it.
Right. Yeah. You need to let go.
Yes,
Exactly. We try to
dude.
control our reality so much. But that's not, I mean, it is what I don't even know. I don't want to say what is and what isn't, right? But it's like, that's not what's natural, right? It's more natural to go with the river, the flow of a river
Absolutely.
against it.
And then
Yeah.
just quickly, just and then we'll hop into it in 1 minute here. So I'm sounding good. You sound good on my end. You look good. Everything looks good right now.
Cool.
Awesome. And then
Yeah, I
quickly,
can
so
hear you fine.
okay, perfect. Yeah, let's just do it, and then I'll chop it up afterwards. It's actually already recording, so we can just get starting whenever.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
good.
all right, sweet. So Alexi, the first time I saw you was just like 2 to 3 weeks ago on Artisan Tony's. I'm sure that gave you a lot of good coverage. Artisan Tony's podcast
Definitely.
with Chris and with Lou Elizondo, who is everyone's favorite right now. Just his ability to put himself out there and speak to people like Artisan Tony and yourself, and then just put himself out there. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here. As soon as you started to speak on that show, I was like, one, this guy has something to say, but two, he actually means it too, right? Like it's coming from his heart, which I think is the most important step when it comes to talking all things consciousness, creation, God, whatever you want to terminology you want to put to it. So thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's my honor to be on your show. It's cool.
Absolutely. And
Right on.
I recently just this morning finished Physics of Love, which was absolutely amazing. That was actually my favorite clip. I even showed it to my dad when you were on with Artisan Tony and Lou Elizondo when you started to discuss the harmonization of higher realms, and that's how we got created. I'm not using the right terminology here, so forgive me
No,
for
I mean,
that.
you have to make up your own words, right? So
Yes.
any terminology is good with me. you know. So
Absolutely, but that just rang so true to me because, and let me first preface because why I'm even here talking to you today and why someone like you just is like, I want to help promote whatever you're doing. Again, that's probably not the right word, right? We're trying to get away from words like promote and pushing things, but that's all I can use right now. Is 10 months ago, I was working a corporate job, absolutely miserable in sales, and I was just losing my life. To distract myself from that, I was drinking so much, just like everyone else during the pandemic. I was dating around. I was doing all these things, which for me, I was told the longest time, this is how you gain happiness, right? And I was just doing it to its end. And then one day last April, I just had a serious conversation with myself. I was like, I'm just not happy. And the words, how I was able to verbalize that, as I said, I'm living a lie. I didn't know what that meant, but I said, I'm living a lie. All these things I'm doing feel so false, but they only feel false if there's something true, right?
right.
Something can only feel false if there's truth beyond that. But I didn't know where that. It was just an intuition, a spark. Is I know there's truth out there. I don't know what that is, but I trust it so much that I'm gonna stop everything else, quit my job, stop drinking, and follow this intuition. Literally, it sounds crazy, but I just
No,
trusted it.
it makes so much sense to me. I mean, like totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's. And then I started reading the Bible too in the summer, and just the words because you don't know which direction to go in, right? So I just started reading the Bible, and I was like, the words that Jesus is saying sounds. He always talks about trust, belief, the nature of your heart, right? He always talks about the nature
That's
of
what I was
your
about to
heart.
say. Yeah, he talks about speaking like he's speaking from his heart in his
Yes,
entire life. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we can get into that as well. But is that something that you, since you were a kid, that you've always just been in connection? Did you lose it at times and have to regain like this connection to truth or whatever you want to call it?
Wow. Okay. So you brought up Jesus. We'll get into him in a second, but let me just start. I mean, to just start, right? I've been learning in my dreams my entire life. The very first time I rode a bicycle was in my dreams. I
I
woke
love it.
up, like, went straight to my brother, who was like 6. I was 5, and I said, I know how to ride a bike. And he's like, prove it to me, you know? So he took the training wheels off my bicycle, and I hopped on and just rode in circles in the garage. No problem. So I've been learning in my dreams my entire
Hmm.
life. And like, the only times that it has never really worked out like I thought it would is when I tell someone about it. If I tell someone what's going to happen, that means that they are. So that's where like doubt can get instilled, right? Like we're going to get into that, all that, but I guess. Um, so just to keep moving forward, I guess. So I've had that learning in my dreams just happening my entire life, and it
So
was
you
only when I was
naturally you naturally trusted this other realm, which you didn't. Again, these words, you trusted this intuition that I've had this experience and now it became reality. So you validated it.
Oh, yeah. So it was so validated for me because, like I literally woke up. I knew how to, it was almost like the movie The Matrix,
I
just
was
to
about to
make
say
it as
that.
clear
Yeah.
as possible for everyone that's watching. Like, it's like I know Kung Fu, like kind of thing. And
Yes.
so basically, I woke up, I knew how to ride a bike. And then I've been learning in my dreams since then. And when I was about 8 or 9 years old, like you'd see on TV, like telekinesis isn't real, remote viewing's not real. And for me, it was like, yeah, it is. It's very real. Like, what are you guys
Right.
talking about? Right? Like you can read people's minds, people can have synchronization of thoughts, all that stuff's very real. So I bought Uri Geller's like little book on improving your abilities or whatever. And so I started practicing that kind of stuff. And during a very, very deep meditation at like the age of 10, um, a being kind of like appeared in front of me, like all in meditation, and it held up its hands and removed delusion. So it was like we put humans put the rocks where they are. We built the houses. We put the technology where it is. We've created the philosophies that we follow, and they're all somewhat creations of another man. The only thing that's really true is like the earth and the fields of energy that naturally exist. Everything else is a creation of man, right? So basically, we have a natural flow of reality, and then we have the pebbles that the humanity throws into it.
Right. I
The
love that
wants,
analogy.
the wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations that create the pacing motions of our like individual lives. Um, and so how about, and so then you also ask, like, has it ever been disconnected? It only became disconnected when I stopped following my dreams. And that was because I was trying. I don't want to get too much, and it's kind of personal, but like I was trying to get I was trying to listen to what someone was telling me because I you know I believe them, I trusted like so I didn't follow my like I said, if I tell someone else it doesn't work, right? So basically I mentioned it and it was a bad idea apparently, and so I listened, and since then I've been like getting back to my golden spot.
And that was when you were younger, so that's been a long time where it's been following your way back to that spot.
Well, so that incident happened when I was 27, and I mean, just to get into it, so everyone can know, like a really good friend committed suicide, right?
Okay.
So it kind of created like a weird like worry kind of thing, and like whatever. And so that it's almost, and you were talking about Jesus earlier. I mean, like he talks about like if you look at the water, you'll fall into it, kind of thing.
Right.
So like don't worry about the water, just keep walking on it, right? And so you could say
Wow. Okay.
looked at the water, and you could say I fell into it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so no, like
It almost becomes like a receiver for all your doubts or all the things, and then it just kind of manifests instead of you just having complete faith, as he mentions over and over in the Bible, is you have complete faith, and that's why your heart is clean.
well, and that's the thing too, is like we create with our thoughts and our wants and our don't wants, like we're literally like massaging the future of the universe, right? And so a person in like perfect faith or doubt will always create a person at their golden spot will create whatever is being projected. And so like the easiest way to put it is if you're in full faith, you will walk in faith, but the second you doubt, that doubt will be created.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's natural at birth. That's not, and I know in your book, Physics of Love, it has the kind of the starting point. You explain that there in the book a little bit, but by naturally, we all have that inclination that we're not living true to ourselves, right? It's not one man doesn't have it and the next one doesn't. We all have it inside of us, right?
Yeah, from my personal experience, I mean, I feel like everyone has this knowledge. It's natural to everyone, but we're kind of born into different spirals of existence. Like I was born in Cape Town, South Africa during the apartheid.
Okay.
And my family was like, "This is crazy. Let's move to America where people can be free." So we did, and so for my little spiral of creation, it's always been about like, getting away from those kinds of like conflicts and things like that, and moving towards like true freedom. And what I've realized though, like from my experiences, is that like we're born into different fractals of human creation, and they kind of give you different like
I
they
think they
tell
give
you
you
what is right and what is wrong.
But they
You
can
know what I'm
also
saying?
give you a different pathway back to the golden spot, right? Like when I tell
Definitely.
people, I find a hard way to phrase it, but I tell people I found my faith 10 months ago, and they say, oh, just because you're a privileged, white guy from America, you have time to think about these things. And I go, well, in the past 10 months, I've researched a lot. There's people in the middle of Africa who find their faith. Like people from every strata and every type of, way of life are able to find this thing that is just out there. And people in the harshest conditions in their, the lowest points of their life are sometimes able to find it because they're in those pure thinking of just, I need to find a way out of this. So I know a great example of this was Leo Tolstoy. When he was like 80, he kind of gave up all his riches and was like, I'm just going to live a life pure and follow the footsteps of Christ. And he was someone who was from the aristocracy of Russia. But there's a lot of people in the aristocracy that, are just so consumed with their wealth that they don't want to think about that. So people from all stratas of life can find their way back to their golden spot, per se.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily that they're avoiding it. It's that people only know what they've ever been shown. And like if you're born into a spiral, and like you need to do these things, you need to do these things, these equal success, that's what you will think is success. But over time, those demands, you could say, build up to be like just so
So it's
controlled.
not, you wouldn't say, and this is something I think about a lot, you wouldn't say it's malicious, would you, that these spirals are created? I know you talked about this with Lou, the reason we fall into these fractals of human existence where I have to work to find a living, but did people create those fractals out of malice?
So that's where, I mean, I've never created one out of malice, right? But that's where I don't know if anyone else has or has not. And if you want to go back into like conspiracy in quotes stuff, then potentially, yeah, some people have, like the people that control all the money on the planet, things like that. They know what they're doing, and they continue to propagate this type of lifestyle and stuff. But I don't personally think that it was intentional. I think that it kind of might have just built up over time.
Or people just live out of selfishness, not knowing what it'll snowball into. But I know there's that quote by Napoleon Bonaparte where he was reflecting on Jesus's life, and he goes, "Alexander and I created kingdoms out of force, while Jesus created a kingdom out of love." And at this very moment, millions upon millions of people would give their life for Jesus. So Alexander or Napoleon is aware that he's not living the true way, but he goes, but he still continues to live a life of selfishness and domination.
Right. Yeah, no, it's wild. And because was Jesus really in charge, or was, God in charge? I guess you could
Right.
say, if we're talking about this kind of stuff, like, because the person, like you're talking about Napoleon or whoever, wants to be in charge. And so they can't be in charge if they're telling everyone of the greater flows,
Right.
like,
Right.
because I'm not in charge, the great flow is in charge, right? God, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense. But it's so interesting because we naturally are being pulled two places, right? We're being naturally pulled to our golden spot, but also our ego is naturally pulling us too.
Pulling us away, right? The things that we want, right? Like I wanted to retire young, kind of thing. So
Right.
I put in so much energy into like all this stuff that ultimately took me away from my golden spot at the end of the day. Like, and that's why I don't even really try to sell my boards or my books or anything like that. Like, I let everyone know that's a fractal of my delusion. Like,
Right.
like I created this book. I think it's awesome. It does have like a lot of truth to it, but my truth is what's true to me, and like what's true to you should be what's true to you. Just because someone's wearing a suit and tie doesn't make what they say true. You know what I'm saying? Like, truth is ultimate. Like, we already all know the truth, which is in our heart. Um,
That's
yeah,
it's such a good point, and it's something that you mentioned on I think the last or second to last page on physics of love, and this is something that's why I truly believe that truth exists because many people can find it and they all kind of say it the same way. You say like Buddha and Jesus, they're all saying the same thing,
yeah,
even though they're thousands of miles apart. And when I found my faith 10 months ago, I kept telling people, "Don't believe what I say. Go find out for yourself."
right.
Like I found it on my own. I didn't get indoctrinated. I literally how I did it was for 3 months straight. I just went for 4 hour walks outside, just thinking and letting stuff go, letting stuff go. And you also mentioned this book. Don't let go of everything at once. Let go of one piece at a time, one piece at a time. And that's exactly what I did. I
Yeah,
analyzed my thoughts and said, this is untrue and this is true. And I let go of the untruth day by day until like 3 months in, I was so overwhelmed by this intuition and just feeling that I literally said, like out there, it was a gorgeous day. I said, I see you. I'm here now. And literally at that moment, my heart and like whole soul got filled with so much joy. And then a week straight after that, I was just like, living a completely different world, and ever since that moment 10 months ago my life has completely changed. It's like, how do I, and this is the great question, right? How do we orient ourselves with one, better understanding that truth, and then also living within that truth while in this fractal of human existence? $1 million question.
oh man, I don't know. That's where I'm still working on solving that
Right.
one personally.
Yes.
Right. Like, I went to work earlier today. It's not like I mean, what I do every day kind of like is changes, honestly, because of that. I'm trying to stay at my golden spot. I'm trying to stay connected to the universe. And so I have to write, I have to play music. I gotta like do like, you say, engineering drawings, all kinds of different things. And it's, at the end of the day, man, like, I don't know, that's where I could say through meditation, I know how to get right back to zero. I call it going straight to zero. And it's where you just let go of everything. And so, I don't know. I don't, like you said, it's the million
I
dollar
don't
question.
I don't
Uh,
think you're supposed to know. I think you're supposed to know that, or trust, let's say as Jesus would say, trust that truth exists and try to align yourself with the best you can and just take a step forward, basically blindly take a step forward in this existence and things will unfold themselves. But you have to just trust it and to the best of your ability align, and once some things unfold or don't, you learn and go, you know what, I was still holding on a little bit. Then you kind of reassess and then do it again.
Well, it also depends on what you're striving for. You know what I'm saying? Like if you really want to connect to the oneness and all that stuff, then like you really got to let go of almost everything. Like I've literally like moved out into the woods for 9 months in my camper, and like had generator and was like living with water and stuff. But then it was like, oh, it's time to make money. So, you know, I got started working again, got money and all that stuff. And like trying to get back out to where I'm just living out in the camper again, honestly, and just like traveling the country and doing like music shows.
That's one of the things I was going to ask you 10 months ago. When I had that revelation, I was like, what the hell? Am I going to just have to give everything up and try to grow closer to this the best I can? Because I feel like going back into society, I'm going to compromise myself. And I feel so impure compromising myself, which if you asked me like 2 years ago if I would be doing this, I would be like, there's no way, just because partying, drinking, all this stuff is part of my identity per se.
Well, that's the give and take too. And I mean, like I was saying, like you could say I was closer almost until I was 27. And then like that event kind of happened, and it was like, well, you know, I haven't made this much money yet. My friends have made this much money. And so it's almost like the Great Delusion. I don't know if you know the Styx song, but they're
Okay.
like, point being, it's like you think your neighbors have it made because they have these materials and things like that, but that's not really the case. Um, you know, at the end of the day, we're all just people. And like for me, it was never the case because I am a designer, I'm an inventor, I'm a creator, and it's like, well, you think you're successful because you bought something that someone else designed. So for me, like materials have never really don't really equal value as far
Right.
as like who a person is or what a person is. And then also when it comes to like actual percentage of your body. I mean, like what you see of me is literally less than a percentage of the
Right.
energy that's creating me.
Yes.
Yeah, so the physical really means very little to me. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And that's such a when I try to talk to friends or family or anyone about this, like it's like I don't even know where to begin with this stuff, right? Because people are they're just not this is they have never like you said, they're sucked into all these other fractals of human existence. So it's like where
yeah,
do we even begin this conversation? But I think the thing that we have on our side is that it's true, right? And it's when people like dip their toe into it, they feel the truth within it, but it's just so easy to get sucked back into the normal world.
yeah. And I think if people just kind of sit quiet and actually like look kind of at what's happening, they would see that it is the case. Like we're all
Right.
people that are just kind of like thrown into the planet, and we all happen to be in different countries when we're born. And so like already right then and there, you're a person, you're a person. Like if I was born in a different country, I would probably be a little bit different. You
Absolutely.
know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And so you could say that, and like I think even like they say in science and all that stuff, like 50% of your habits and all that come from your outside influence versus your DNA. And
Absolutely.
so yeah, in that sense, like you should already like be aware that people are born into these different flows of space. And that's one thing that's never really taught, because there's always, you could say in quotes, a higher power pushing some type of greater agenda that's ultimately the percentage of the few wanting to push this agenda on the many. And I don't like speaking in those terms, but that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, if we were all living right by the earth and stuff, everyone would have fruit in their front yards instead of grass, and like we would just walk outside and eat fruit and just be living on the earth. Like, yeah,
Yeah, but here's the thing. If you say that to people, I think they also will go, "Yeah, I agree with that." But like how the hell are we supposed to do that? Like we got this house, so they agree, but it's just how do we get there is the $1 million question. So I got a bunch of passages from your book I want to ask you about. We can get into
cool.
that.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I want to ask you first of all, how was that interview with Lou Elizondo? What's your whole opinion on what's happening right now? It's everyone's just talking like the slow disclosure. I hate to say this because I trust his character, but is it disinformation or what? Like, how do we know what to trust or not to trust?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, trust your heart, right? And like, it seemed like he ended up interviewing me, like interviewing us instead of us.
Absolutely,
We thought we were going to each have like, I thought Artist and Tony was going to start for 15 minutes, then Chris was going to speak for 30 minutes, and then I was going to ask questions for 30 minutes. But it ended up him just kind of like asking us questions. And at the end of the day, he didn't validify, but he basically said like everything I was saying was kind of right. He even like talked about like the rusting copper of, you know what I'm talking about there, like with the
absolutely, yeah,
crystallized. Yeah, and so this is all stuff I've been like getting through meditations, my entire, and basically writing down when it comes, and to have that kind of verification, you could say, was kind of nice.
Well, because I think he's obviously privy to some information that we aren't, and I think
Yeah.
he basically said this: we don't know what to make of these things. So they could also be approaching it in the wrong ways. Where someone like you and I discussed, if truth is out there, an individual should be able to discover it for themselves. So,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I think you offered some insight that potentially was rings true to what he discovered.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too, is I think I don't want to get too far into speculation, but maybe he's not allowed to say things. Um, but he's allowed to kind of like hint towards people that might be saying things.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I don't really know.
Yeah, well, he kind of validated a lot of your points. And he does that in a lot of his interviews. Like he'll look at the
Yeah,
camera, he'll go, "Yes." Like when you said a few things, he was like fascinating. He loved what you were saying.
exactly. Well, the one that kind of took me off guard was when he was literally like, yeah, my good highly qualified PhD friend, like highly qualified philosopher friend,
Yes.
uh, mentioned it something like rust, and I was like, oh no way, because that's like literally how I describe the delusions that people hold on to them. I literally describe it as rust on a
Yes.
on an individual. Like not maybe not in the book, but I do in a podcast with Artist and Tony.
Right.
I
Right.
say I say these could be rusty. Like you could call them that. So like the alignment there was like almost perfect. Um,
But how do you think? Because based off the information he's given in interviews, um, obviously he's talked a lot how he worked on the nuts and bolts of the UFO things, but then he starts to think about this. What has he potentially been? Because it's two different things, right? If they've seen nuts and bolts crafts, isn't that different than what you're potentially describing, where it's different dimensions?
Not necessarily. Um, there's you the way I like to describe it is there's a future realm. It's not necessarily the future, but it is kind of the quantum future of our existence right now. Would be the denser realm of experience, but it also ties in with like an afterlife realm, right? So like if it is beings using technology to come from this denser realm, then they probably have some type of nuts and bolts equipment.
Right,
There's,
right.
there's also times when you could say vortices might naturally harmonize, or that you naturally create ripples that harmonize to denser realms of experience. And so
Okay.
there's some, and so like it really depends on what's being magnified and what's being amplified potentially.
And so,
Uh,
how do you think through that? Just where do you think in that conversation with his PhD friend, why did they land upon the Rust thing? Where would that lead them to land on human beings having, these wants don't wants? How does that attach to UFOs? What do you think the connection is there?
that has to do with the outer realms of experience and the inner realms of experience, and then how you could say being disconnected from the greater flow is like rust when it
Okay.
comes to a dimensional alignment. Because if you're a gold, so like if people that are watching might not be familiar, but like say you remove all your delusions, now you're at your golden spot. Um, when you're at your golden spot, basically things that you create will last, a lifetime, if not further. And so when you have your reincarnations, you kind of reincarnate from your golden spot and you're able to transfer information, meaning you're able to recall information from your past and future lives. You're able to like connect with the Akashic record and all of time and that kind of stuff. And so like as soon as you kind of dive into your own wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations, you start creating these little spirals that take you off center. And when you get into those little spirals, basically you lose connection to the greater flow of reality is the easiest way to put it. And like when it comes to energy transferring from the greater realms to the denser realms, our entire creation, our experience of the universe is coming from a less dense realm of creation. As energy kind of orbits inward towards the center of a giant black hole, right? And so if you want to think about energetic flows, we essentially are the energy for denser realms of experience. And um, our wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations cause a misalignment with our future selves and past selves. And so when you connect to your golden spot, you basically have an interdimensional alignment that occurs. But so like with those wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations, you're off center, you're less connected to the greater flow, and it makes a less impure crystal within the entire vortex of time, you could say.
And the physical manifestation of that is depression, anxiety a lot of the
Totally.
times. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're off center from the golden spot, that's when you have like, if you're like way too much in the future, trying to like be something that you're not, you're probably pretty anxious. And if you're like worried about things from the past, you're probably pretty depressed. So it's like really getting in tune with the now moment and just harmonizing essentially with the incoming energy and outgoing energy, right? Like,
Do you think potentially, because I feel like everyone in the world right now is just like, what who is harmonizing close to their golden spot? I feel like no one, because as you mentioned in physics of love, we have media, all these things feeding us information that just naturally shoot us off in these little spirals,
yeah,
just constantly. So our existence as humanity must seem crazy to other people looking inward that are more harmonized.
yeah, we're very rusty. Like a lot. I always like tell my brother like we're like little electrons like shooting around like on the highways trying to drive back and forth, and like all of our little wants and don't wants are just like buzzing around like creating a lot of friction. And we're all like separated too. Like we'll all be in a we're driving on the highway. We're so close to each other, but every single person has their completely different life going on almost,
Yes.
and like different thoughts and visions and
Yeah,
yeah.
it really stinks because you want to connect with. I was just walking my dog the other day, and it's just like down a suburban neighborhood, and like me, a woman is walking on the other side of the street. I'm walking here, and it's just like a lot of times in humanity, there's always this just like tension, like with between people, and you want to like I try to say hi to people, but there's always this tension between people that I feel like just does not need to be there at all.
Right. I mean, if you think about an energetic sense, that has to do with holding ego, like uh, like holding a posture in your mind body. Like I call it a mind body spirit diagram. So like holding your posture because you want to walk by and you want to be you, right? So you have to like you're worried about like saying the right thing or saying the wrong thing. Well,
Right.
subconsciously at least, you're people are worried about all kinds of stuff, and they're not just kind of like going with it and accepting the flow.
Right, right. And would
Yeah.
you say the bet, because I think here, let's just dive right into it. On page 8, you say, I think because in page 8, you say there is an intelligence in stillness. Rather, stillness promotes intelligence. So do we have to look for those times where we can be still so we can understand how to live in that alignment? Like we can't just, I couldn't be walking down there and go, all right, Mike, try to snap into it. Like you can't force it.
Um, it happens pretty quick though when you get there. Like when you actually let go, it can be almost instant, like within a second.
Okay.
Because like a second of our time relating to like denser and denser realms of experience could be like a billion years. um, because like the energy flows in, there's time dilations within smaller spirals of creation. So depending on how like far in, how still you get, essentially, is how like much intelligence you could potentially like gain. And so it really comes down to like I said, like we're a creation essentially of the outer realms of experience, and our stillness is what allows the denser realms to form, right? And so like when you're very, not you, but like when in general when people are very pacey, um it offsets the natural energetic spirals and vortices that are created. And so denser realms of experience can't harmonize properly to create like a nice vibratory frequency to exist, right? So there's literally an intelligence in the stillness people create.
So can you explain that in relationship to in the podcast with Lou, you mentioned how um experiences from higher realms might be like an angelic experience and experience
Yep.
with denser realms. What's the relationship with that?
Yeah, I mean, so totally like the outer realms of experience need to harmonize before the inner realms of experience, before our, so we live in the universe, right? And you could think of it, so, and from the quantum state, we're like matter bubbling up, right? So it's like literally like, we're not really moving through space, but we're manifesting through space. Matter is always in a constant form of manifestation, blipping in and out of solidity. And so like basically, um, where's that energy coming from, right? It's like this bubbling soup. And so you have these outer realms of experience when it comes to like a greater orbit through time, because all we have really is our perception, and we have a field of energy. Everything's orbiting. So as our perception is orbiting this greater structure, depending on our distance from the center of it, is how stretched and crunched the universe would be. And so when you're thinking about an older realm, they would actually be experiencing a less stretched universe. So one from the past, but that would also be considered like more of an angelic or older realm of experience, less dense. Um, And but this is all happening in the now, in the quantum state. So it's not necessarily our 4D past. It's a past that exists in the greater realm.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like that energy orbits around our energy that's orbiting around. And there's also energy that's orbiting more inward. And so when it comes to human consciousness harmonizing with the electromagnetic universe, right? Basically we have an alpha, a beta, and we have delta through fast gamma as far as conscious perception. But like when it comes to consciously perceiving the physical universe, you have to be in an alpha, beta, or slow gamma state of mind. And those are essentially certain, frequencies. And when it comes to creating a frequency within our four-dimensional space, it has to do with the 5D vortex of time. And so basically you could say that each frequency that's created in your brain comes from acceleration towards center at light speed while orbiting. And so that creates the fractal nature of energy that creates our conscious experience to begin with, right? And so if you want to think about the conscious experiences of an outer realm, they would be less than 1 hertz, right? Because the human brain operates at 1 hertz and then it goes to 80. And if you want to think of the conscious experience of a denser realm, that's faster than 80 hertz. And this is all within our orbit around time that's literally creating our 4D solid physical space as energy is synchronizing. And so like, basically outer realms are the bigger realms, denser realms are the smaller realms. So when you have a magnetic vortex that's coming from a bigger realm to a tighter realm, you're experiencing the past or beings of a more pure nature or angelic. And when you have a denser experience getting bigger, that's essentially a manifestation of human stillness or stillness within our layer of reality.
And that can be like a very overwhelming experience, right?
Well, I mean, that would be if you want to relate it to the angels and all that kind of, that would be more the demonic side. It's a small being becoming bigger versus a bigger being becoming smaller.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
And but do we have do we have complete? This is one of the things I wrote down. Do we have complete control of this, or can these things freely enter our lives against our will? Which is a scary thought.
I wouldn't be able to tell you 100%, but I could tell you that when it comes to the energy we put off, I think we have 100% control of the energy that we're creating. But I wouldn't necessarily say that we can necessarily control like the flows of the bigger realms.
Right.
Yeah. We're kind of like subject to their will almost, right? So like you could say the greater realms will is like our natural flow through space, but then we also have the human pebbles that get tossed in there that create the pacing of our lives, but also create the pacing of all the denser beings as well.
But that is a scary thought if a demonic force can enter your life. And like, I'm not gonna lie. After I watched a bunch of the Lou Elizondo interviews, I started to then I started thinking about these things on a different level. Like,
right.
Oh, is there like things out there that maybe I do or do not have control over? And how do I separate myself or put myself in a more pure space to hopefully prevent my interaction with these things? Because Lou keeps implying that these things exist and we have absolutely no control over them, which is going to scare a lot of people.
No, yeah, and that's what they keep bringing up the hitchhiker phenomenon.
Yes.
Which somewhat relates to that. And so the way I've seen that you can get rid of hitchhikers is by basically connecting to the greater flows of reality. It's almost like solar gazing, meditation, like really like going to bed when the sun goes to bed, waking up.
Yes.
Almost like being as natural as possible is the way to get rid of hitchhikers. Yeah.
And you might, and again, I'm just throwing stuff out there. That might get rid of like 99.9% of the hitchhikers.
Right,
Then there's like 0.01% that are stubborn as hell or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just telling you what I know from my experience, like my meditation stuff. That doesn't mean it's necessarily like the only way or anything like that, right? Like it's just what I think and what I know. Yeah.
Well, if anything, it offers a path for someone to walk down, because without that, people might be overwhelmed with this information like I was. Like, oh, there's these potential entities out there. Then I had to start thinking, all right, well, how do I put myself in a better spot? So it's, if anything, it's good information in this whole, ether of conversation that's going on right now. Is like, well, what can I do to basically be a better human?
Right.
Which I think what this is all about.
Earth, essentially, yeah.
That's really interesting. This whole thing that's going on might, and you mentioned the physics of life. It might actually make people be more religious, like take it more seriously.
Yeah.
Like actually listen to what the Buddha and Jesus said and think about what are the implications of this and does it relate to you and what actually are they talking about? Kindness and love.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, we're trying to use these anti-gravity technologies, but when you start thinking about what these and how they might actually work, you're kind of going into 0 point energy. And when you're tunneling into 0 point energy and trying to bring energy out of denser realms of experience, you need to realize that those denser realms are based off of your stillness and the create. Like, so if if someone with really bad heart walks up and uses a free energy device, some really bad things potentially could happen.
Absolutely.
So we need to understand how we influence these denser realms of experience before we start taking energy out of them.
Yes. And Lou mentions that in one of the interviews. He says, "Don't go into one of these situations without making sure you have a way out of it." And I don't know what
Right.
that means for him being surrounded by professionals. I don't know what he means cuz they're obviously testing this on a very deep level if they know it exists. Who knows what they're doing to test this?
Yeah, no, I think they've had way more like physical tests out there, like you're saying, like groups of people going out there doing all kinds of stuff,
Yep.
uh, taking a real good look at it. And that's why some of them have come to the conclusion, right, that they're kind of like dealing with like the angelic and demonic stuff. And that's kind of wild to me. But I mean, it seems to be the case for what's happening.
Yeah, and again, but when that started to manifest in my mind, I just kept thinking like you're always safe in the light because I think the underlying truth of existence is good in nature, right?
Yeah.
But you have to choose to align with it. If you ignore it and decide to live against it, it's not going to force its will upon you. So you kind of have to go. No, I acknowledge you and I'm going to live in alignment with you. And it's there for you if you choose it. But if you don't, then you're walking out into the wilderness and who knows what can happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like, and it really is easiest to say doubt or being insecure about like where you are now and trying to force some type of success that you don't already think that you're going to have, right? Like when you let go is almost when you get what you're looking for,
Yes.
because it's already like aligning and trying to work itself into your life. um,
It's
yeah.
amazing. So this started with you when you were 10. Do you feel validated in a sense or do you feel good that potentially this is hitting the mainstream and your voice is actually starting to be heard in a sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've been working on this for a reason, you know what I'm saying? And like all the writings have somewhat been aligned with also very interesting happenings, right? So it's like I've kind of had my personal validifications along the way. But you could say as far as like mainstream thinking and topics and whatnot, I mean, when Lou basically said, yeah, that's interesting, we're looking into that,
Yeah.
things can be rusty, it's like, okay, maybe now I should just go full force and let more people know. And I've had other people basically reach out to me like on Facebook and different mediums, basically saying like, you sound like the Maharishi, and I'm like one of his, his top students kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. I just study astrophysics and and
Right.
meditate. Yeah. No,
Yeah, it's
no. So like, there seems to be like a lot of validification to keep moving
absolutely.
forward with it. Yeah.
Absolutely, dude. And you know exactly what to do. Just keep looking inward. Page 10, you say consciousness forms in black holes. That went over my head. Do you mean literally black holes?
From my understanding, yeah, it's like the synchronization of energy from a higher dimension. So if you wanted to consider our consciousness is made of like 6 different energies, like delta through fast gamma, it's like our conscious experience was like awakened when those 6 energies like tidally locked around a black hole. So it's like the synchronization of energy around a higher dimension creates our conscious experience.
And would that be the black hole that's in the middle of our galaxy?
No, no, like our entire physical experience, everything we see is like the 4D perception of time, being manifested from like a higher dimension. So like that would be like the center of time, the greatest center of all of our orbits.
Oh, so you're talking about like a main like the biggest black hole of time.
Yeah, our entire universe is being stretched into existence based
Right.
off of our relative frame of motion. We literally can't even physically see the center of our universe, like the center of time. We can't even see that because our perceptions are being stretched away from it and crunched to us. Like all the matter that's towards this, matter is towards the center of time, and light is away from time.
Okay.
Yeah, like in that view.
So what's happening with the black holes within our universe?
That's so. when you get to, I actually like write that out here. I'll just go ahead and read this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is in the physics. This is in the infinite pool of experience and awareness. It's the very last philosophical discussion, and it's the last line right here.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically, with our new understanding of the infinite pool of experience and awareness, we may see that our universe is blossoming like a flower into the sixth dimension. When we look at the flow of primordial energy from the perspective of the sixth dimension, we see it as part of a growing structure. Our universal experience is the result of energy flowing into a black hole. In our experience, we see the spark of new conscious experiences as energy flows into the black hole of every galactic center. We are one part of a structure that is growing into the sixth dimension. We are the harmonizers of that structure. Through love and synchronization, we flow like a river into the next layer of experience as it branches out like water in a lake heading out to sea, or like a flower blossoming towards the sun. We are the water of the 1/6 dimension, the dimension inwards to where an electron is a universe. We flow like water, we are water, and we are time. We are all one. So basically, in the center of every black hole there, you could say that another universe is being created.
That's everything that you say is profound, whether or not it's meant to be. Because that's why I love that your books are so short. Because you go, this is my idea, and this is it right here. You just get right to the point. But I think the beauty behind all of this is exactly what religion does for people. It gives people meaning. But it's like that's where religion had a disconnect with me. I was like, it feels like an idea, but where does it get actually, where does the rubber meet the road? And your
Right.
application is like where the rubber meets the road, which is like really profound because people can then apply it to their life in a much more deep and meaningful way. And that's immediately what resonated with me, and everyone reaching out to you, I guarantee, feels the same way. Um, and it comes from the heart, right? I think that's, as you said, religions have got so distorted over time. You might just be
Definitely.
going back to like what religions were meant to be originally.
Well, yeah, and that's what I always say. Like, Jesus never walked around saying be a Christian, right? And
Right.
he never said go be a Buddhist. They said just be. I don't know if they said this, but I think what I've gotten from their messages is like be right with your heart, right? Be right with the greater flow of reality. And I mean, that's pretty much, it's that simple, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
When I found my faith 10 months, this is how I explain it to people. It became overwhelmingly apparent to me that there was a greater underlying truth of basically of love and kindness, but Jesus didn't appear in front of my face. I had to go read, I had to join a church and go read the gospels to then learn more about Jesus. So I had to go, I get what Jesus is saying, but there's something beyond Jesus that can become apparent to you, whether you're in a cave meditating.
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't just appear to you. So whether or not Jesus was aware of that, I don't know if he's the end all be all that people make him out to be, because I think through that you can lose so much of the truth that really exists.
Yeah, no, when it comes to talking about religion and all that stuff, I try to like stay away from some of those more stigmatized words, right? But something many people can agree upon is that he may have been one of the greatest rock stars of all time, because 2000 years later, people are still talking about him, and he didn't even have Twitter or Facebook. So
Right.
like, like, yeah, no, I mean, there's no question that he wasn't like some type of really awesome thing. Like, I mean, I don't even know
Yeah.
what to say, right? Like,
Can I
yeah.
take you down, and then I want to ask you about the addiction things too in physics of love. Can I take you? I don't know how comfortable you are with this. In a couple of the interviews I've watched, it doesn't seem like you're too comfortable about down the speculative path. But what was Jesus's deal? Was he just so? Was he just? Did he just meditate like you, just ever since he was 2 years old? Just meditate his whole entire life, that he was just so in line with this energy? What made him so special?
Well, I mean, clearly he was like, there were like, there was predictions of his coming from what I understand, right, to begin
Right.
with. But then also, I think he may have done a lot of traveling, and they don't speak about much of his younger life, when he traveled to different parts of the world and learned different things. And I think he might have learned, I don't know, don't take me, don't hold me, but like he might have actually learned like yoga and stuff like that, like over in India before he like did all of this stuff.
Right.
When he was like 30-ish or 27-ish, was out there learning, and then came back, and he was like just like a really, really, like he was really badass at it, like essentially,
Yes.
like he was like the number one rock star of that, of the understanding of that.
Right.
um and I think it has a lot to do with, again, like believing in his heart versus what other people were telling him. because
Mm.
I don't want to use. I'm not trying to speak poorly on him or anything like that by any means, but he was in a way fatherless, right? So like he didn't have someone like not fatherless. I mean, God was his father and all that stuff, right? So like he, but as far as a physical father, he had Mary and like I don't really know is what I'm getting at. Like Mary and Joseph and like I think he was kind of like let people just let him do his own thing. Like it reminds me of John Searle. Have you heard of John Searle?
No.
He's basically like a super famous and not famous, I guess, because they kept all of his work hidden. But he's like an inventor who created a flying disc, and he learned in his dreams from like the age of 5. And one of the reasons why he thinks that he was so confident and able to like follow his dreams was because he never had someone telling him how things are. He grew up and like people just loved him no matter what, and they didn't really try to force different opinions onto him. And so because of that, he was able to follow his dreams. He had confidence in himself and the things he
Mm.
knew. And so when it comes to Jesus, I think he's always been like, everyone's looked at him in a way like, follow your dreams. You know what you're doing. You are the one kind of thing. Like, um,
Totally. And I think, and you mentioned this in Physics of Love, people think that, oh, when I become, this is like a power grab, so that if I can harness these things, then I can use it to my advantage. But I think here's the thing. I think truth is weird like this, that in order to actually reach it, you have to be kind of selfless and let go of that part of yourself, or you're not ever going to reach it. And that's why when Jesus could do all of those things, it was because he was in such a pure state. When you eventually get there, you don't want to use things to your advantage. You just want to give back to others and serve others.
yeah, I mean, like we are kind of all created by energy, right? And so it's almost impossible, like you're saying, to be in one state, meanwhile wanting so much of something
Yes.
else. Right. Totally.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting. I can't tell you how much this intrigues me. Um, so we all know so many addicts in our. That's why I love this because there's so many practical applications to it. I want to read something else. Addictive actions will lead to the smallest spirals of creation, while egoless motions and synchronicities lead to the greatest. For example, if you suffer a drug addiction, the furthest in time you will see is to your next fix. You will be disconnected from the greatest flow of reality. I think when if an addict hears that, they go yes, or someone who lives with an addict. It's just so
Yeah.
blatantly obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the easiest way to like show different examples of in quotes addictions or delusions is to start off with like the smallest spirals because in order to see a spiral of delusion, you have to be in a bigger flow of space. And so now you realize, okay, well, that's one flow of space. What's the step up from that? What's the step up from that one? Oh, I was born in this country. I'm American. What's the step up from that? Okay, I was born on Earth. What's the step up from that? I'm a being within the universe, right? Like so you start to learn how to remove your in quotes delusions to connect to the greatest flows of reality, step by step, like you were kind of saying earlier, like
This is so amazing because right now, after I quit my job last year, I eventually wanted to do just one-on-one coaching because so many people are struggling right now, and that's so funny. That's one of my first steps with people is identify. It's crazy, dude. Identify the spirals you're in. It doesn't have to be a drug addiction. It could be all these spirals of thoughts,
definitely
and identify that as something that's controlling you and keeping you. The way I phrase it is keeping you from truth.
right, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think I say like sit quiet and examine the wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations that create the pacing motions of your life, right? So like that's essentially it, and it's like all these little things are creating all these little pacing motions, whether it's an addiction, whether it's like stress in the car on the way to work or something. Like we're all kind of like creating it, and what created it? What instilled that original thought that you even need that to begin with? And like, is that actually like a real thing, or is it like an advertisement going off at the gas station while you're trying to pump gas? Like, I made a really short video last week actually, where it was like I'm at the gas station pumping gas, and the gas station itself is trying to sell me like Coca-Colas. It's telling me I need to go to the dollar store. It's telling me all this stuff, and I'm just like sitting there like, no commercials, please. Like
Right.
stop push your greater like stop trying to push like stop trying to sell me stuff and make me think that I need things.
But
Uh,
it's so overwhelming because when I started doing that last April, you start to realize that almost every single one of now you are a little bit probably disconnected from this because you've been thinking about this for a while, but people who are just so inundated with this, the things society feeds them, it's potentially It's very scary because your whole identity has to change. You go, have I, as I said, I was living a lie.
Yeah.
All these things that but I'm telling you, it's going to free people. People are listening. I'm going to put this on my TikTok in various clips
Cool.
because a lot of the things I've been saying are very similar to you, where there isn't, the only reason people will self examine is if they believe that there is something on the other side of that. If they don't believe it, then they're not going to do any of this.
Well,
So go for it.
no, I was gonna say it is overwhelming. I mean, because there's so many different layers of people's creations that have added up to like equal what we now value as success, right? And like as you remove them all, you'll see like even right now, like I'm wearing a certain shirt because I thought I needed to wear a certain shirt tonight. You know, like I can't be wearing like a tank top or something. It's like even that in itself is like one of those little spirals. And so like when do you really ever remove them all? It's so weird to think about sometimes, but yeah, no, like it really is freeing, and it's good to like identify, especially if you're trying to like be happy at the end of the day. Like
Yeah, right.
for me, it has to do with like achieving true happiness, right? I was doing a lot, and right, so every time I was kind of falling into someone else's spiral of creation as an artist, you want to like make your boss happy or you want to make someone happy, and so you're kind of like falling into like what they're trying to project into reality, and then you realize that reality is basically just a projection of everyone's wants and don't wants, and
Right.
like yeah, no, it can be very liberating to get rid of like that and connect to the greater flow, like yeah, totally.
And here's like a lifeline for people. It's like people don't realize how powerful the love aspect of this is. It's not just a feeling that enters life. Oh, there's actually something so powerful about it that it replaces all of those insecurities you have like times 100, right? It's not just a
Yeah,
one for one thing. It's like so much more powerful than the insecurities and doubts, is it not?
well, it has a lot to do with your health even, because you could say like as you get closer to your golden spot, meaning like your natural node of creation by the universe, you create, your body is literally like manifesting better into space and time.
Yes.
um, I call it, so like there's basically the easiest way to think of it is you have like a gold, for people watching, you have a golden spot, and you have a natural node of creation based off of the incoming and outgoing energies that exist. And whenever you have a want, don't want assumption or expectation or a spiral of creation that gets put on you, it shifts you from your golden spot. And so you could call that a stress. And the distortions that are created from you not existing in your spot are a strain. And so when your body is strained within the universe, it basically causes a fuzziness in like your creation, um, and that
And
leads to sickness and pacing and degradation, and all
right,
that.
right. And then people have to take drugs to forget that they're not in their golden spot because
Right, right, right. So that's not really healing. That's just like suppressing symptoms caused by like improper creation, right?
right.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. I gave up drinking, and it was the reason I gave up drinking 10 months ago because I was just like I felt like it was keeping me from my intuition. Now I was abusing drinking too because of the pandemic, but I felt like it was keeping me from my heart. So that was something I could easily get rid of to grow closer to my heart, right? But then beyond that, then it gets a little bit more gray. Well, what is keeping me from my heart? It was my judgment against people. It was things I was how treating people,
Right.
all these other things, and it really requires someone to dive within themselves. But to anyone watching this, like it is so worth it, and some people never realize in their life, and some people realize at 45 at different points. But it feels like that's the purpose of life is to live in alignment with your golden spot, not to make a bajillion dollars and do all those things because that does not lead to fulfillment at the end of the day if you don't lead with truth.
Yeah, no, I think it's wild too. And like as people get older, right, and they kind of realize a lot of the things they did were just like so not really worth it at the end of the day. Almost like, not saying that they didn't value their life, but at the end of the day, they strive to be closer to like zero, like you're saying, be closer to that spot,
What's
Uh,
what's your perspective on this? Why do we need to, if we all just at the end of the day, as you said with Lou, go back to the and become pure, all our rust goes away once we move on. What's the point of putting in the energy to live close to our golden spot while we're alive if we're just going to be pure at the end of it? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if you will ever get to the end of it if you don't ever like choose to go back to it. And from my understanding, it has to do with the future realms of creation. Like if we're all doing our own things, then the denser realms can't properly harmonize. And so like there literally isn't a denser realm, and so it kind of messes up with different flows. So I mean, as far as like why, I mean, do you want suffering or do you want like? I mean, that's the easiest way, but that's I don't even know honestly to say that one's bad or good. Like,
Right.
yeah, no, it's hard for me to say the why.
Yeah. No, that's the $1 million question right there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like, yeah. Everybody's got their own why. For me, it has to do with world peace. I mean, like this is the human condition, right? We're born on Earth, and it's the human experience. Let me put it that way. And like, it's a blessing to be a human on this planet. It is an absolute blessing. I remember at one point I was like 7 or 8, and I was like, I got to be a human, right? Like, wow, I'm not a dog or a cat or a grass. I'm a human. This is so cool. Like, I'm the most advanced species on the planet. You know, like it was so cool. I thought that was like so cool for me. And but then it's like we look around, it's like, oh, what do we get to do as the human? Oh, we're forced to do these things. You know, we have to do these things, all these things that get like thrown onto a forced society. And I'm not saying they're bad or they're good, but they've definitely built up on top of each other to create an experience that's very controlling and not natural. And we're in the human experience, which is amazing. Like in heaven, right? Heaven is on earth. And it comes down to like the removal of the delusions in order to actually experience heaven on earth with the human experience. Yeah, no, it's wild. But so that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and
That's why it's hard for me, like you were saying earlier, how do you make money and live and work your way to your golden spot, right? It's almost impossible in a
right.
way. Yeah. That's why like both methods need to kind of like grow together. Is
Maybe it's impossible the realm we're in. That's why we just have to trust it to the best of our ability, and the next realm it'll become easier or just different. Um, all right, so this one I want to read. This was really interesting. Um, It may be challenging to see, but there are beings that may only survive within doubtful flows of space. When it comes to conscious influencers, within time, they typically will guide you into a karmic loop of their liking. Very rarely, this is beneficial to the host.
yeah. And that has to do with the hitchhiker effect, right? Like, and basically, literally every single don't want, assumption, and expectation is like a vortex of energy. And if you think of a river, like we're in the fluid of time, that's a 5-dimensional vortex. And our 4D experience is being manifested by the overlapping of all the energies. And so, like, just think of a river now. You have places in the river where there's smooth flowing water, like the center of a river versus the rapids. And so, like, certain parts of the river, algae can grow, certain parts, certain fish can live. And when it comes to the energy that you emit, you basically create a habitat within space. And so, when it comes to like there's an intelligence in stillness, you know, that also even ties back to like the concept of I think I call it tulpa or stupa, where the I forget what that's called, but basically like the genies and stuff are creations of human stillness, um, because you have these little vortices that you create, and like that's where they can eventually influence you and like your friends and like your family and things like that, to create vortices within them, and that allows their habitats to expand.
And are these things apparent, or are they living within the subconscious, or are these actual forces that are visible?
I think that from my understanding, it's just a denser realm of experience. Like we're literally a certain distance from the center of time, and they're in a tighter orbit. Is the easiest way to explain it. Like
But
it's a
but
tighter orbit that's created by our energy that we put out.
so it's an energetic experience. It's not seeing a being come into your room at night per se, but it could
Oh
be.
no, it could totally be, especially if like a vortice is created that then harmonizes your consciousness to a denser realm. It could totally be a being that comes into your experience.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't have to be. It could just exist within the denser realms.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's interesting. This is the first time I'm thinking about this. I didn't realize that the denser realms could interact with us on a just an energetic level that's not visually apparent where we go, oh, this thing is here. It's just more a feeling per se.
Yeah, no, and that even relates back to what you were asking me earlier. Like, can we influence the bigger realms? I would say to a degree. You know what I'm saying? But like at the end of the day, we have to go with their flow. And so when it comes to those denser realms and that kind of stuff, I would say at the end of the day, they might be able to influence us, but we have the ultimate control over them.
Right, right.
This is it's like where I lean towards on
Okay.
that. Yeah.
That's interesting. So
So
this
like
was
they'll try to like whisper in your ear, go do this, go do that, or what, like, but that doesn't mean that you have to. You control every motion you make.
right, right. And that just it goes back to again, the Bible. It makes you think like the devil whispering in your ear, but you always have the ability to deny it.
Right. And just go with the bigger flow of reality.
Right.
Like if you sit still and do nothing, like trust me, you're not gonna harm anyone.
Yeah, it's that's what's interesting. Where's the place for people who just live so in the middle, just do the average thing. They're not doing anything extraordinary, but also not anything bad. They're just living right in the middle. Every weekend, maybe just going out to get some drinks, watch sports a lot, like a lot of the American population. They're living just right in the middle.
Right. I mean, they're caught in the flow of the country, right? The delusion, like the one they're born into.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you just accept every flow you're born into, you're almost like a robot.
Right. That's so
Yeah.
that's really interesting because I've been watching a lot of people talk about now I've never done DMT, but apparently when a lot of people do DMT, they come out of the experience going, "Wow, most of the people a lot of the people I interact with are what they call NPCs, non-player characters." And would that be potentially people who just fall into every single fractal that exists are non-player characters because they're not listening to their heart?
Right. I mean, if they're just going off the action reaction and only doing like what they've been told to do and kind of shown to do and not really being true to themselves, then yeah, I would say that's what you're getting at. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'd never thought about that, but that could be an
Yeah.
explanation for that.
Yeah. And that's where like, I mean, those people aren't like doomed to that. Like once people become aware that they exist within flows of space and like I mean, it becomes really apparent when you become a part of the workforce, right? You do everything your boss wants you to do almost, like within your moral boundaries, but it's like you're still doing all these weird things, like you're standing at a cashier's register or you're pouring cups of coffee all day, and it's like that's not what you would normally be doing. I don't know. So it's like you're living up to their standards, and you're literally your entire physical life is based off of their wants and don't wants and assumptions. And
Right.
so like you learn that you're existing within his perception or her perception, your boss's perception of space and what they want and desire. And so then that goes up to another fractal until you realize that there's a natural flow, but then there's also like the man-made creation one. So ultimately, like you try to live up to the standards of your country, but then it ends up being like world wars going on and stuff, like,
Yes.
because
Right.
people are living up to human creation instead of like a natural creation. Um, yeah. I
I
try to
think
stay away from certain words, but you get what I'm getting at.
but I
But
think it's inevitable, right? I think people will
yeah,
read between the lines and go, this is how it could potentially apply to our life in all these different ways.
totally.
At least that's how I see it. I don't even know if you said on one of or one of your recent shows with Artist and Tony that you're basically your main goal, and you said it here is like kind of like world peace. But that's the great undertone of the four books I've read of yours so far. Is basically I think it provides hope to people. Like it
Yeah.
provides me hope, and I think that's so powerful right now. Is
Well,
just hope.
yeah, I mean, I don't see why it's not possible. Honestly, like I see it being so easy. Just stop fighting. Why is this guy gonna go shoot that guy, or why is that guy gonna go like what did that guy that you're actually shooting at do to you? What, like you're literally just following commands of your like what your boss is telling you to do in order to make money, to buy something that someone like some dude invented.
Right.
Like I don't know, it's so weird to me, it doesn't make any sense.
But as you say at the end of your book, though, it's if you that structure is like kind of falling away. What you say ever since 2012, or really ever since 2019, the structure
Right. So
is
that has to do with like with the realignments of like the in order for the denser realms to experience, because like yeah, I mean it's just a natural process that happens. Even like with you could say the age of the Pisces, there was like a dimensional alignment. Now there's like another one coming up with the age of the Aquarius happening right now. 2,000 years from now, it'll happen again. So it's like a recrystallization of human spirit is the easiest way to put it. Uh,
So, and I hate to keep throwing these good and bad because that's probably not even the way to think about it. It's probably a lot more gray than it is just binary, one or the other. Um,
Totally.
but
Yeah.
it's also with on that scale, right? We want to be on the scale or the side of the spectrum that's closer to truth, right? If we potentially can, right? So is it as we enter this new age, it requires people like yourself getting out there and going, offering a new, even if it is just another fractal of existence, offering a new perspective.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why, like, thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Like it takes every single person, not every person, but like, I'm not even trying to do anything. I'm just talking.
Right.
I'm just sitting in my room talking.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wrote these books off of Powerful Visions, and I've been talking to my brother about it for like 3, 4 years now. He got bored of hearing it. Not he didn't get bored of it, but he like knows it all. And then I saw Luis Elizondo go on TV and basically say that they really don't know what's happening, this and that. And I started joking with my brother. I was like, how do they not know
Right.
what's going on? Because we've been talking about it for so long. Um, he's like, just make a video. I was like, okay. So I made a video and it ends up being like, Artisan Tony saw it. And then since then, I've done like 10 to 15 podcasts with Artisan Tony.
Yeah.
And last one I did was pretty much with Lou Elizondo and Chris Slato. And and Lou Elizondo, basically was like, we're looking into that. We're looking into that. My great philosopher friend says that too, kind of thing. Like, so I think it's all on the right track, and it all basically leads into the stuff that Jesus did talk about, the stuff that Buddha did
Yes.
talk about with the greater realms of creation, the denser realms of creation. There's dimensional alignments that occur periodically, and when those happen, there's like a melting of the mind, body, spirit distortions that are created, and it's just like a natural cycle that happens every like 2,100 years ish. Um, I think in the book that I have written, I have it at 2029, but I would say it's between there and like 2,200 years. So it's not like a defined line or defined moment. But it does relate back very nicely to like the whole like Mayan thing, and like
Yeah.
it's very weird.
Wait, you're blowing my mind right now. So you were thinking about this before it, like in this detail, before Lou and all this even went down. You were like, "Oh yeah, this lines up perfectly with what I've been, thinking about in meditation and whatnot."
Definitely. Yeah, no, I've had this in my head, you could say, since like 2012. I wrote the first book like 8 years ago. And then I was even debating with my roommate for a while if I'm even ever going to write the Liquid Light State Universe, which is the
Right.
second. He was like, to write the book is to not live by the book, right? He started telling me about this
Yes.
because now I've written this book. Now I need to fulfill this delusion of going around and like showing people this book I wrote. Um, so it's very like to write the book is to not live by the book almost. I don't know. So he was like saying stuff like that, and I was like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but
But
no.
then the alignments happened essentially to where like I I wrote the book and it instantly led into the book The Crystal of Time. And that one I finished writing at 2:21 in the morning on February 21st of 2021. And the premises though is that it leads you is that 2 squared is equal to 1, right? Which shows you how like the squares of consciousness interact with the
Okay.
different layers of reality. And with the physics of love, that also got written on a 12/22/21 day. And like all of those were accompanied with shooting star events like right afterwards, like where it's like go outside and you can see the craft almost kind of thing. And so
Oh
literally
my
I step
gosh.
outside, I look up and I see 2 shooting stars shoot off.
Really?
Yeah, I know, it's like instant. So I mean the synchronicities are through the roof. And I just if I and that's where it's like the closer you get to truth, the more you feel it. Like,
Yes.
the more like which direction you need to go. It's easy. This is the direction. This is towards happiness. This is towards like turmoil. Like
Right.
it becomes pretty obvious just to kind of go with it at a certain point.
But now that our country and our government is potentially faced with this,
Yeah.
like that's not what they want to hear because truth doesn't align with our government, our international policies, our monetary policies. Definitely not.
Well, I mean and that's where you were asking, I think in the beginning, like if there's some people that are aware of this and if they're manipulating it, you know, and that could potentially be what's happening with. So this is where we're gonna get canceled, right? We got to be quiet here. But like the 2029, what is it? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like I don't know if it's the UN, the new agenda, like the 2029 agenda.
For
You
whose
know what I'm
agenda?
talking about? I'm sorry, say that again.
Whose agenda?
The one world order kind of thing, like 2029 agenda.
No, I'm
Or
not. I'm not familiar with that one per se.
it's oh man, let me find it for you. I'm surprised I'm not just not remembering it off the top of my head right now. But basically it's like a pretty like well-known thing. It's like a 2029 New World Order agenda on.
Well, of course, I've heard of the New World Order agenda, but I didn't know it was a very, I thought that was fluid, like it was always changing, not something that was written down and that they're sticking to it.
um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna. That's why I say I don't even really want to talk about it if I don't really know enough to say too much. But I'm pretty sure there is something going on. We'll just cut that out. You know what I'm saying? Just kidding.
But but indulge me here for a second. Where does
No, like basically what I was getting at is that like it ties in with. I wish I had it. It's the Green New Deal, right? Aren't they trying to like finish passing everything by 2029? That's the date. They're trying to have like all the green technology out.
okay,
Uh,
okay.
they're going to go towards like more of a one world government.
Well, I know China has big plans, but I thought that was like for 2049 or 2050 that they were going to implement all of that stuff. Um, but
I wish I could find that site for you with all
I'll
the.
I'll look it up afterwards and then we'll share it.
Yeah, but basically it ties in with that because like it's almost like an intentional melting of the mind body spirit diagrams with all those things that I was talking about. And then like that's where government might want to be controlling the narrative by saying, oh, well, this is what's really happening. But in reality, it's just a natural cycle. And they're trying to maintain control of a natural cycle.
Mm.
That's
I
what I was
think
trying to get at.
I think Lou is aware of. If you have you listened to a lot of Lou's interviews,
Yeah.
he the way he presents it, almost like he's aware of that without saying it, and he says, "No one, don't let anyone control this narrative. It's about all of us together, everyone putting their input, and if anyone controls the narrative, you know not to listen to them." He's basically been saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's pretty wild. That's why honestly, like for world peace, everybody just needs to stop listening to a narrative because the only thing that's real is what's real right in front of you right now. Like
Right.
people that are watching this are probably sitting at home or they're in their car. The only thing that's real to them is like sitting there right now. Everything else has been like
Mm.
is somewhat of a delusion. It's a fractal of human creation being passed on, a narrative, a story, some type of greater agendas behind it. Um, the only thing that's real is what's real right in front of you. And like for me, I'm at that border as far as age. Um, I didn't grow up with. I grew up with technology, but like the Nintendo came out while I was growing up. So as a kid, I had like physical objects, right? I only got video games and computer and media after that. But for younger generations, that's all they've ever seen. And so their entire truth comes off of these cell phones and these images that are literally doctored by marketing experts to
Mm.
stimulate the parts of your brain that send off endorphins. Like, and there's science to their methods. They know exactly what they're doing when it comes to marketing. And I'm not saying that all marketing is bad, but people need to realize that those are all things that are being like pushed onto you. If it's on there, it's a narrative being pushed onto you. It's not now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Um,
also, not to go down that road too much, but if this, you're right, you have to be careful what you say, right? But if Lou, if they are, if they've been experimenting with these things for 70 plus years, Lou and a couple, and I'm only saying what Lou has said, so I'm safe. I feel like if he's winked at us towards this, he implied a couple of his podcasts that potentially there's organizations or groups of people that at one point went rogue with this information, and
yeah.
he blatantly said that, which was extremely surprising to me, that he went out and said potentially there's people that went rogue to this, and he talks about wanting to give them amnesty, so that they'll come out of the dark. It's like, who are those people? Not, I don't believe, if they're just defense contractors, does it lead to technology? Because these things have a lot of implications to them. Um, but it was hopeful for me to hear that it says, Lou, it seems like there's a lot of people high up that recognize this and are say it's potentially gone too far, and it's time that we begin to, because the only way this is resolved is if you put it into the light, right?
Right.
If the more this gets bottled up, the worse it gets, right? Because people continue to hide in the dark.
Well, they're
Um,
taking it to their graves, right? And they're telling people on their deathbed essentially, like, we probably shouldn't have done this.
right.
Yeah.
It's,
Um,
it's
it
it's
is wild. Yeah. I mean, from my understanding, and like John Searle, like I said, he's an inventor. He built like this generator that levitated on its own power. And so he ended up building like flying disc off of it in like 1960s and 1970s. And he's even like gone to world governments, shown him his work. They've seen it. They've taken the test. He's invited the media to come out and watch him fly his craft around the Earth, and then they report in the media UFO flies over wherever. Like, I have a short video about John Searle, but there's like a 2-hour documentary on him on YouTube. That's a really good one, and like it's called the John Searle story. Just
okay.
watching, but yeah. Um,
Yeah,
so
and Lou,
there is technology, no question,
yeah,
that's being suppressed.
absolutely. And Lou says over and over, and again, who knows what information the way he presents his stuff in podcasts goes like, we're not even aware of the tip of this in terms of not the actual truth of it, but how it's been applied throughout history or
Right.
manipulated or controlled. I think that's the big secrets that are going
Yeah.
to come out, that this has been known for 2,000 years and that it's in the basement of certain, religious organizations.
Yeah.
And um, but I think the people, I agree with Lou. I think the people can handle the truth because the truth applies to their lives. It's not some distant thing. It's something that's a part of our reality, and that ultimately makes it opens us up, right? It opens our worldview, which is scary for a moment, but I think we settle down into truth as long as we're not willing to fight it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's still, it's not overwhelming anymore, but it's what it is. Like
Right.
outer realms, there's inner realms, there's UAP. But when it comes to like us traveling through these different, like if we ever want to have like faster than light technologies, we need to realize that we're traveling through different densities of experience, most likely. And so that's when you're going through these other habitats that are potentially creations of your stillness. So they could be like these wild worlds you're flying through as you're traveling faster than light. I don't even know how to describe it. Um,
It's
but so
amazing.
like that's what I was gonna say. Like that's where we need to realize that our harmony, like literally the harmony between people, is what will determine our potentiality of using these like technologies. Um, yeah,
Oh my gosh.
because
And
that's
it
where it does all tie back into like the angels and like the demons and things like that. If you want to say that angels come from bigger realms and demons come from denser, then like I don't like using that because that gives them a connotation of good and bad. I think that there's good and bad in all different areas of life, all
right.
different aspects. But we need to realize that once we start messing with those kinds of technologies, we're potentially opening up portals to denser realms of experience.
And
Yeah.
that's potentially what they say is happening. I don't know if you like Skinwalker Ranch. I know
Yeah.
very little about that, but they say that just could potentially be a natural spot where that occurs.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me too. If you have like a magnetic anomaly of some sort creating like a vortice, it could just naturally harmonize properly. Because
And
there's like a stretching crunch ratio of energy. And consciousness is like fundamental. So it's like our consciousness is tuned to like a field of energy. And if we want to tune to a different layer, we need to have that energy like crunch and twist to like
right.
properly harmonize.
So Alexei, this is the new paradigm is upon us. Whether and it's so crazy. I commented. You were just on a podcast a couple days ago with artist and Tony, where I put in the comments section that Lou Elizondo said, and you guys were talking about this. Disclosure has already happened for people who are paying attention.
Yep. Yeah.
So that has already happened, and it's only going to increase more as government officials.
No, that's not better. This is better. Yeah.
No, you look fine,
All right. All
and
right.
you look great. And I love a little scarf thing too. I was rocking those for a while.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess the time is over, but I don't really need it anymore.
nah, it's a good style. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, but that disclosure has already happened. So we just make it really simple for people in your phrase. Like, how can people move forward? Like, what do they do with their lives in small ways? Not everyone can quit their job and move to the woods. It's like, how do we begin to recognize this truth and begin to slowly let it into our lives where it doesn't have to be an overwhelming experience? Because I think people aren't going to be denied for much longer. The people I interact with on my social media, everyone senses, like, they sense it coming or sense something happening. They're just looking for answers of, but how do I approach this? It's as simple as that. How do we approach this?
It has a lot to do with those spirals, the line of sight and the spirals of addiction, right? So it's almost like you let go of your addiction of I'm gonna use mine, right? I'll use my personal one, coffee. I'm gonna drink a little bit of coffee. Right? So you let go of this spiral, it connects you to a bigger flow. You let go of that spiral of materialistic, where it's like you associate so much of your I ams and your egos essentially. Like I am an American that loves to drink coffee. So okay, now I've let go of I drink coffee, and I let go of like I am American. Now like I'm each one of those spirals you let go of literally puts you into a bigger line of sight where you can see a bigger flow of space. Your conscious awareness increases every time you let go of one of those. Um,
Your potential increases.
your potential, like, yeah, because you've let go of that 30-minute spiral, you've let go of that hour-long spiral. And what that does is actually like puts you in a spiritual sense on top of a mountain where you can look into the spirals of other people and be like, oh, well, they're addicted to that behavior, or they're going to be late for work, so they need a, it's like their thing in their head. They're so worried about being late for work. It's like, whatever, you're 1 minute behind, relax, it's okay.
Right.
Like people get so caught up in their little spirals of why they're doing their actions. And so as you increase in your height, it allows you to understand why people do what they do, which allows you to have greater compassion and understanding, right? And so that at those moments, though, you can actually connect with people and help them out. But what's challenging too is in order to really pull someone out of their spiral, you almost have to jump into their spiral to begin with,
Yep.
right? So you have to jump into what they think, what they believe, in order for them to connect with you, in order to pull them out of their spiral. So that's where like the challenge really comes into, as far as like healing others through your posture control, is
Mm.
like the ability to jump into the tightest spirals and then to pull yourself out, because some spirals are really hard to pull yourself out of. And so if you jump into like a spiral of depression and thoughts like that, connect with someone, you have to be able to pull yourself out and that other person, right?
Yes.
Um, so yeah, no, you learn to like take those postures and really help people walk them to their golden spots and connect to the greater flows.
And Alexei, it is so true. And ever since 10 months ago, I've done this with countless people. And I can't tell you how true it is stepping into a moment with not even like my clients per se, just like people I know within my sphere of life,
Yeah.
stepping in with them and stepping into their spiral can literally be physically stepping close to them and being approximately
It
close
is.
to
It
them.
is. Like a lot of times, yeah. You like the second you're within, like, I think I forget what they call it, but like a 6-foot sphere, right? You're within their magnetic field, and it's like at that point, I almost have every thought that person has, everything. It's
Yes.
like, okay, I don't. Okay, this is gonna be dangerous. I'm getting in here, But you do it. You work with them. Um, yeah.
It's so worth it.
Uh,
And also, people need to realize too, for people who are in the position to do that, it will be mentally and emotionally draining, and it might take a few days to recover for sure.
yes, definitely. Yeah, and that's where like you also need to realize, like, again, going back to like the analyzing your own postures, like, are you, like you said, a couple days, right? For the next day, you might be like depressed or sad or something because you had that connection and you worked that energy. So that's where you have to learn to pull yourself out. And the more you practice, it's like lifting weights, right? You learn how to just pull yourself out instantly. So it's like, oh man, that was rough. Good to go. Like,
Right.
yeah, with any practice comes like, more perfection, you could say, in the skills. Yeah. And
This
that's
is
where I
so.
think that you want to circle it back to like Jesus and stuff like that when it comes to healing and posture control. I think he's super advanced at his ability to like feel the creation within a person's natural creation and help them to it. I think that's really what it comes down to, is like helping people get to their golden spot as
Oh
far as
my!
like,
I love this so much.
yeah,
Also, because just like you, like I've had an intuition, and it sounds so crazy, but I'll stand by this. Like I'll die on this hill. Like I've had an intuition forever that this stuff was real, like and applicable too. It's not always just an idea. You can make it real and it
Yeah.
in existence. And I think once this disclosure happens with the government to whatever degree, right, that Lou is able to help do this, it helps us have these conversations. Go to people around us, like, are you ready to have this conversation now about what this potentially could be?
No, and that's where I think, I wish I could thank Lou almost every day in a way, but like us doing this is in a way are doing that. But like, because like I said, I was just talking to my brother about it, and I didn't really even want to go public with any of the information I had.
Mm,
Yeah, I've been learning in my dreams, I've been doing stuff, whatever, whatever, whatever. But it's like as soon as Lou's out there saying like, we really don't know, we need a new physics, we need this, and that. It's like, well, I wrote this book 7, 8 years ago, and it seems very applicable right
yes.
now. Maybe I should finish writing this series of books and see what happens with it. Yeah,
Absolutely. And other
yeah,
than learning in your dreams, have you done anything else that, meditation, anything else like that that other people could
yeah. Well, I
do?
mean, as far as like physical education, I have my bachelor's in astrophysics, physics, planetary science, and astronomy from the University of Colorado, and then I have my master's in mechanical engineering from the University of South Florida. But as far as meditation, like I said, I've kind of been learning in my dreams since a very young age, and I've always had the next lesson as far as like meditation, what I need to practice in order to help remove delusion or stay free of delusion through like visions and whatnot. And so like basically one of the ones I was doing for each one of these I do for about 9 months. One of them I was walking the handrail of the local pier while doing my double nunchuck routine. So like basically doing a double nunchuck routine while doing a 20-minute walk around like a 6-inch wide
Okay.
thing. And the ultimate thing behind that is that the next step is obvious. It's an obvious walk. Like you know where your next step is. Like there is no questioning. There is no, you walk that line, right? And you do your move. And the next step is freaking obvious. It's the foot in front of you, and that's all you're worried about. Right. So the next step is obvious. Another one I was doing for a while was when I kind of moved out into the woods essentially with my camper. I built a platform up in the trees and I surrounded it with color changing LEDs, and then basically started off with like red, and I was doing rooting exercises, and then going through the different colors, and then ending up in indigo and doing out of body like meditations. So I did that for about 9 months. I call that like color yoga. I haven't like shown anyone that or taught that to anyone, but that was what I was doing there. Trying to think of like other things that I've done that are like that, but very, a lot of different practices.
Do you ever become overwhelmed with emotion during any of these times and cry? I say this because I run a lot and I do other things where I feel like I'm in touch with like such a pureness, and it almost happens like every other day. And this might be a reaction because I was living far away from it for a while, so the fact that I'm close to it now is overwhelming in a good way. But do you ever become overwhelmed with emotions and like cry or anything like that?
It's hard to say. I mean, not in a long time, maybe, but definitely it's happened. It's definitely happened, but definitely not in a long time. I think once you like really get there,
Yeah.
um, you're not so worried about, or not that you're so worried, but you can say the releases aren't as big. Almost
Yes.
like you're good. You don't have to worry about it, or like I don't know. All those moments for me were typically like associated with some type of epiphany
Yeah.
or some type of like big letting go of some type of thing, or
That might
um,
be an indication that I'm still holding on to too much because I have like every other day. It's like I'm definitely still holding on too much because I'll go
right.
for runs and I'll just like be overwhelmed in a good way, right? That's really interesting.
Well, we choose what we think is good and bad. That's what I find funny too. It's like not in your case, but like I'm saying in general, like we people choose like, oh, that was good or that was bad. So like we've learned to do this whole like something is good or something is bad thing instead of just things are, you know.
mm,
Um, that's another big one. But once you realize, I'm not saying like go do bad things and it's okay. I'm saying still live by your heart, but you'll realize that like everything that you naturally do by your heart is pretty much good anyway. Like people are
right.
naturally good. Yeah. And a lot of that, so the good versus bad thought though, will tend to always put someone in a state of like assumption or expectation. And a lot of times at this point in society, people are very doubtful. So like the good versus bad typically leads to that person is bad. So like when people walk around with like a good versus bad attitude,
Mm.
they're more likely to say that it's a bad thing just off of an assumption. And so kind of already like
Oh.
propagating this bad energy. Does
Oh,
that,
that's big
yeah.
right there. That's big. Oh my gosh. That's so true because it's
Or
hard
worry.
not
Yeah.
it's hard not to once for a while I was fine with it, but then I would seep back into it like people are not living the right way, people are living the right way, right? And it's hard to get out of that frame of mind work too, because then you end up judging people and judging yourself. Am I doing the right thing, the wrong thing?
Well, that's where it's so hard. And like, that's why I always just say everyone is perfectly imperfect all the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
Like, because we're all always learning. We're all always kids, right? We're all always making mistakes. We're all always getting better. Um, yeah. And it's about, and I think we're all a big team helping each other grow, right? That's the way
Yes.
I work. Like, I'm not trying to one up someone or
Mm.
nothing. I don't gain for one upping someone. Someone doesn't gain from one upping me. Like, it kind of just puts them in a position of judgmentalness or in a way like where, oh, that person is now something negative because they just, I don't know. So it's about working together as a team and we're all kind of just growing. In my opinion, that's how it works.
I agree.
Um,
Um,
and
I,
that's
I
where, sorry, and that's where like, you were saying like Jesus versus Napoleon, you can never control the power if that's the message, right? Because the power is within the individuals. It's not within the, like you, like, so Jesus connects you to the greater flow, whereas Napoleon wants you
mm,
to follow his flow.
right. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah. So it
It's
circles back to
so
that.
counterintuitive in our modern way of thinking too. Like just you got to let go of everything in order to gain anything. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And the thing I want to hit home with people too, this isn't just an idea. For the longest time in my life, it was always like, "Oh, that's a good idea. It sounds nice." But it's so fundamentally true that it will literally rock your world the day you realize that, "Oh, this is the truth." Like literally.
Yeah.
It's not a nice idea. It's the fundamental truth of our reality. And it's the to stand on that bedrock of truth will literally free you as a person.
Well, that's what's wild to me is because I never wanted to write about religion. I was just writing out physics and I wanted to like figure out what's going on in the universe. I'm like, well, stuff can get stretched and crunched. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, there's outer realms, there's inner realms, there's alignments. Seems to tie into all religions that I've heard. Like,
Yes.
it's very fascinating now at this point. Yeah.
That's oh, I
Yeah,
love
no,
it.
it blows my mind. Like when because like I'm still learning.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we're all always learning. Yeah.
I want to close on this because this is kind of what we were just talking about too, but on page 44, 45 of your book Physics of Love, which is incredible. Incredible. I love it. Um
That one came in 2 days.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. So the first day, and they're all 12, 21, 22, 21, which is like the weird thing. So it's like 12, 11, 21, and then 12, 22, 21 were the
Okay.
days on that. I wrote it in 2 days, and those were the days. Yeah.
And you didn't even think like I'm going to write on those days. It just kind of came to you and it
No,
all came
yeah, it
out.
just came, and it was pretty obvious too, because like those are like I said, sometimes it's very vivid meditations and very vivid experiences to the point where it's like, okay, tonight's the night I'm going to write. Um, and I'm just going to start writing. So it's not like it's channeled work, but it's very, I sit there and I basically, I hear the book. It's like every
Mm.
time I write, it's like, I've already seen it. I've already written it. I've already read it. It has to do for me finding my golden spot. It's like my other selves have already written this book. I just haven't done it yet.
Yes.
I'm
But
the one that's behind.
you have to put yourself in a spot where you can receive that. I think I hear a lot of musicians say that they'll like pop famous musicians say it'll be 2 a.m. and they'll just sit at piano and just play gibberish for hours and then a song will come out. Is
Right.
that you had to wait for the book to come out? It didn't just let me think and it comes. You had to wait for it, right?
Well, yeah, I kind of wait for it, but I think it has a lot to do with the interdimensional alignments, honestly. And like, it's hard for me to say that, like, so like,
Yeah.
um, because I mean, I studied physics. I grew up in a very physics world, like, capitalist materials kind of thing. But it's
Of
like at the end of
course.
the day, I studied astronomy and astrophysics, but I'm ending up talking about almost like astrology and religion. You know what I'm saying? So it's very it's hard for me to say, but at the end of the sorry, I'm like rambling now. I feel like
No,
I'm
I
getting
love it.
fired up.
So how do you, first of all, because I run to meditate, I'll pray, but I really want to get, and I'll probably get into some deep meditation when I run. After 40, it takes a while, but after like 45 minutes on a run, I get into that runner's high type thing where ideas are just flowing like crazy from the source, it feels like, but it takes
Right.
a long time for that to happen.
Well, so that has to do with like after you let go of. So once you're there, you never have to leave that spot. Um, right. So then we like for some reason it's like okay, we're done meditating. Let's now go be mindless and do all these things almost. So it's like the
Yes.
further you walk away from your golden spot, the more you have to meditate to get back to it. So like
Oh
it,
my
once you're
gosh.
there, you can take you can take a picture and like I call it a picture of mind, body, spirit, right? So like when you get to that spot, literally take a picture of your body mentally, physically, spiritually. Take a picture, feel your body, and you can get to there instantly every time once you've been there. And that's what I've been able to do since when I was 10 years old, almost like in that being kind of like came up
Mhm.
like removed illusion. It's like now that you've been there, you can go there every time. And so, like, when people finally get to a spot, they should be able to get there instantly. But you have to take that picture and you have to be aware of it, you know?
That
Um,
framework that you just said is, and remember, frameworks are important. They don't have to be
yeah,
bad or a framework is good because a framework can lead you to freedom and truth. That framework you just said there just connected so many pieces to me. The past 10 months, I've been reading religious texts, praying, meditating, do all these things, but I would still slip away. And that framework you just said is very important. Get a mental picture of not just your body, but your mind and your spirit. And you mentioned this in a lot of your books where those three collide, um, and just
yeah,
become, yeah,
take that picture and then like you can be that at any time at any moment.
wow.
Yeah. And that's where it comes down to like taking postures of that's where you learn to take posture, right? It's almost like acting is the easiest way to like relate it. Like today I'm gonna act like a wild, wild west character, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I have to give a lecture at the university, or I'm meeting with a client to draw boats, or I'm doing a podcast with you now. But and that's where even my last lecture I did at the university, I started off in a suit and tie because everybody likes the suit and tie
I
guy.
saw I
But
saw some of those videos.
so 5 minutes into it, yeah, I take off my suit and tie and I'm wearing a t-shirt. And then I put on my hard hat and I'm putting on my bright yellow shirt because I'm the same person, but just having to play a different role almost. And like through your mind, body, spirit postures, you realize that people take postures in mind, postures in body, postures in spirit. Um, and then you can really learn to what I call ego steer. So like use your postures to steer through the different delusions in order to connect to the greater flows.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That was the question right here. Ego steer, and then we'll get into the last one. Yeah, but ego steering is perfect too because
Yeah.
naturally we're going to be in these fractals, and you're
Yeah.
going to naturally have your ego be part of you. It's not going to just go away.
Yeah. Yeah, no, ego is important. And when you, okay, so say I do just completely dissolve my ego, in a way, I almost become one of those automaton robobots guys that you were just talking about. If I just like literally go into everyone else's flow of creation and do
Mm.
whatever they want, think whatever they think, that's me without ego. I'm just this mindless thing going in someone else's spiral of creation. So you kind of do need to have an ego and say, well, hey, that's not the greater flow. I'm going to go this way instead, or that's not a flow that makes me happy or fulfills my spirit. It's not the flow that my heart says to go along with, right? So like you have to use your ego, is what I call it, to steer through the different delusions. Like you have a guy trying to sell you this, a guy trying to sell you that. It's like, no, thank you, no, thank you. Let me just keep going. And eventually you can like work through the delusions of society
Right.
and find like confidence in the self. And that's such a hard thing to do sometimes when society says that if you don't have enough money, you have no value, or if you don't have a certain thing, right? And so that's kind of what we're taught based off of our culture is that you need to have certain things like you need to get married, you need to have kids, and this, and that. But at the end of the day, not everyone's gonna have those things, and those things honestly aren't natural.
Hmm.
They're all like concepts and ideologies that get pushed on to everyone. And every country has their own different ideologies. And so you have to, when it comes to like being convinced that you need to go blow up another country, you've probably been manipulated, at that point. Um, so I think when people become aware of that, it'll be harder and harder for people in quotes power to continue to and that's where like the in quotes threat is, but it's not really like a threat. It's just people becoming aware of who they are and their abilities. Um, yeah. So that's why they want to have a controlled disclosure.
Right.
Because ultimately at the end of the day, you are the direct connection to the universe, and you are the direct connection to your beliefs. It doesn't matter what the government says or what another human says, because you are the direct correct connection. And so to need some type of government disclosure already removes you from the greatest flow
Mm.
of reality.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's even that, like rings true to me a little bit because I keep going. What are they going to tell us next? So I can fill these ideas in my head about reality, but I don't need
Right.
that.
No, because
Oh
we're
my
already
gosh.
that's where all beings are already connected to the greatest flow of
Oh my
reality. And it's almost like
gosh.
we get confused growing up. That's what I've been saying. I've been
Oh.
trying to like stay free of delusion my entire life. Has like been my greatest goal. Is like the greatest challenge is staying free of delusion. Yeah.
That's so crazy.
And
That's and
that's why
again,
it's so hard for me to like literally push my inventions forward, because like I understand that anyone that dedicates their life to fulfilling my skateboard idea or something like that is literally dedicating their life to a fractal of my creation.
right.
Yeah, so it's like, well, you'll enjoy the skateboard, but it's not connecting you to the greater flow of reality. Like, um, but at the end of the day, I need to make money, and so like I still do artwork, I still do engineering work, I still, but as I get closer to the center, I feel like I find my true purpose, which is, you could say, writing these books or meditating and become like, I don't know. I feel like every day I get closer and closer to zero.
You know
So it's
what?
good.
This is a part of me that makes me want the disclosure from the government is not just so I can fill a or live within the fractal of whatever they're going to release to us, but the more that they release and the more that the general public and people I know are no longer able to deny a potential new paradigm shift, then I can step in and be like, let's have a real conversation about life now. That's a big part of it too, not just that I want to live within that fractal.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's come through very, like I said, a lot of synchronicities in my life, right? Like one time, a good example was like I wanted to get more involved with the UAP, like on the more advanced, like nuts and bolts level. What does the government actually know?
Mm.
And like that one time, it was not one time at this point, a few times, but it was like I had that urge, just go to the coffee shop, you'll get more involved. And I ended up meeting this guy. He's part of like this company, right? And basically we ended up talking for a while, and he ended up buying my book, saying like I was on the right track. This is basically, he didn't confirm it, but the fact that he bought the book afterwards and said like what you're saying, they don't want people to know, kind of stuff. And it was a validification,
Who was
right?
this guy?
I
See
don't
a
want to talk
CIA
about too many
plant?
people. No, it's not that important. But
Okay.
what's important is that it gave me verification to keep writing and keep doing my work. And then recently, then Artisan Tony picks up my work. Then we do a podcast with Lou Elizondo, and he basically was like, yes, our scientists are looking into that.
Mm,
Yes, beings become rusty. And I was just like, okay, so now he's basically saying, because I've written that from scratch. And the fact that he got to the beings becoming rusty, that's like my conclusion, but coming from scratch. So like,
right.
yeah, it's wild that he mentioned that and somewhat verified, at least said that that's one potential avenue. I'm not going
Right.
to say
Right.
it is all or isn't, but it ties in with all like the science and the physics, like in the religion aspects of it too. Um, and I've been talking to one of my really good friends who's he's Jewish or whatever, and he does this thing he's like really into it. He's like, this sounds like Kabbalism,
It
like,
does. Yes.
yeah. But then other people say it sounds like the law of one. Then other people say it sounds like this. And to me, I'm like, no, it's physics and it's reality.
Right. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. I'm not trying to like create it, this is physics. This is
And,
reality.
and
Yeah.
you're not going about these things by you're doing it through the way that we're all supposed to find truth is by looking inward, which is the point of all of this. And that goes to my last question or my last quote of yours, which is like in the last page of your book. And this is kind of what we've been talking about. And this is what I try to hit home with everyone I talk to. I say, stop listening to me. Stop listening to your pastor. Not that they don't have to say something significant, but you're only ever going to find truth if you look within. And it's there, but you got to look within and you got to trust that it's there. Um, You say on your book on page 45 or 44, you say, remember, just like the governments needing to tell the human population that UAP are real is the same as needing a religious infrastructure to be connected with the greatest laminar flows of reality. The connection is direct. The connection from us to the greater reality is
Yeah,
direct.
yeah,
It's not hard. It's direct if you want it.
yeah. I mean, I think we kind of already touched on that, but
We
like,
did, we did. It's just it
yeah,
blows
no,
my
I mean, it
mind
goes
still.
Earth, human, human creation, humans then create, right? Like, um, sun, Earth, human, we create. But then it's also like the great vortex of God, our experience, the experiences we create. I mean, I
And
can't really, yeah.
that'll just go over people's heads. But I think people, in I mean, in short, people just need to look within, right, and righteously look within.
Right. What's the easiest way to put it? Like, yeah, I think we already kind of covered it better earlier, like just talking about how like you don't need a suit and tie to tell you what your reality is. Like why does someone trust a guy, your neighbor, right? Will tell you something, but it's like, no, 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 let me go Google that. It's like you trust Google over your neighbor. I'm not saying Google's wrong, but Google's definitely been fact checked, and different things like that. But it's like at a certain point, people will only trust a certain source, but they're not going to trust the guy who literally experienced it, did it all himself, and like, so now you have experiencers telling people this just happened, and that person that they're telling is like, let me see what the government says. I don't know if I trust what
Mm.
you just said. So it's like a huge lack of trust all over the place.
And
um,
people just think so they don't have any. They think so low of themselves. Like,
and
who am
that
I to
that
have a?
no, I mean that does relate because ultimately what you think of someone else typically relates to how you think of yourself and how you treat other people, right? And so when people walk around like that, it's because maybe they're not being honest with themselves or they're not always a trustworthy person when they speak, right? Like, why would someone ever lie to you? Or why, um, unless I'm not saying I've never lied or like told a story or whatever, but it's like, why, what benefit do you get from lying? And why would someone ever lie to you? Like those kinds of actions just don't make any sense to me, you know, at this point. And I don't even really think I've ever done it. I've honestly been as truthful as possible my entire life. Um,
That's incredible on
if
its
anything,
own.
too truthful, right? Like in certain times, maybe I should have told a white lie, but I'm like a Sagittarius. I'm very truthful, very upfront, very honest. Um, yeah,
It's so crazy just to think that because people have been denying things within themselves. They'll go to the grave denying things within their own heart. So what does a world look like when they can no longer deny some levels of that truth? What it's interesting.
well, it's challenging, man. And like because there was a point where like I mean I grew up in this martial arts academy world too, like courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, right, and Donald Spirit, and like but also like meditating. So it's like always be right, always be good, but it's like the nice guy ends up finishing last in our modern society. He gets run over by all the guys making money and pushing on him to do the work. But at the end of the day, you end up being first because they're like Napoleon, you know, and then you're kind of like Jesus, and you have the
Oh,
greater flow.
a
You're
hundred
connected with the
percent.
greater reality versus like your tiny little fractal of delusion. Essentially, that's what I call it. uh,
You just said it there. And it is so hard because I was chasing money not too long ago. Literally 16 months ago, I was climbing the corporate ladder. How much money can I make? How many things can I buy? Do all these things, like sucked into it hard.
yeah.
And then I couldn't live that way any longer. I was like, this is a lie, and it's destroying my soul.
Well, and all those little things add up to being, and they end up controlling the pacing motion of lives. You know, like every single action you end up make a person ends up making has to do with like achieving their wants, their don't wants, assumptions, and expectations. But 99% of those are like instilled through media at this point, and they're like someone trying to sell you something. It's so wild to me because I saw like I grew up before the internet even existed. I was on TV for playing, like I was put on the news for playing computer games on the internet, right? But now everyone has cell phones. They're literally fed information all the time. Every second of every day, there's information, information, information. Buy this, look at that. Here's this person doing this. This person's over here doing that. It's like, how many people are actually connected to their now?
Hmm.
The energy that exists right here, right now, you
Not a
know?
lot.
And
Not
it's
a
becoming
lot.
less and less as time goes on. Um, I'm
And
not
I
saying
don't
it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's something to be aware of, you know?
here's something a question for you because and now you might have a different answer to this because you've been like this your whole life where I've been going in and out of it. It's hard for me to find people that think the way that I do, and I'm not thinking that I'm special, but I think a certain way. And you mentioned in one of your books, like what I mentioned, my comment to you is having a conversation with people. You can automatically tell if there's a vibe or something comes from it. And I've been like keeping a mental checklist like my whole life. Meeting people like that is like for me, it's like I can count them on one hand my whole entire life. So it's like
Yeah.
how many free thinkers are out there? It's like none.
I don't hang out with many people. No, no, I'm just kidding. Like, it's interesting how they come into your life and how they leave your life because
Yeah.
it's almost like they've never really left your life. Those people were always in your life to begin with, and that's where I've even said it before that that person's a friend by God. Like, meaning like that was a person I was supposed to meet. That was a person I was going to meet. I was always going to meet them. This event was always going to happen. And so we have, and that's where it's like there's friends that are natural that you would always have, but then there's also like friends and stuff that you meet through these different flows of space that we've created. And I'm not saying that those are impure or unnatural friends, but it's like they're not ones that are going to be with you your entire life almost. So it's just weird when it comes to like meeting people that are natural to you, because there's not many that would actually probably naturally exist in your life to begin with.
It blows my mind. Like
Uh,
this life is so wonderful and full of like so much good mystery. Don't you want to like immerse yourself into it? And just like people do not.
no,
Um,
it's wild. I mean, they really want to stay connected to for me it's hard. I can't do it. Like I am an inventor. I'm like a creator. I can't get excited about buying something that someone else bought. I get upset that I had to like buy something instead of me making it myself because I should have had the skills to make it as good as that person did. So it's like
right.
I don't know. I don't like buying things and then having like value off of that. It just doesn't make sense. Um, yeah.
Yeah, even when I met with the rabbi a month ago, we had like a business conversation at the very end of it. He's actually going to be on this soon, and I'm going to go to his synagogue. When I asked him, it was like, is looking within, is that a viable way to find God? He said that's the only way to find God,
Right.
which just like rung so true to me. It's like it's there for anyone who's listening to this, someone who's in been denying it their whole life. You can literally change your life today, right now. Like, just go to your room. That's why in the Bible it says it always tells people to pray in private. Do these things in private. Go to your room and just like think, and it's there for you if you want it, but it's not going to force its way into your life, basically.
Yeah, no, it's pretty sweet. I mean, at the end of the day, too, what comes from the physics of love is that there is only right now. I mean, people say like, "I'll wait a week from now," but that now is still just right now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like the now, as you correct your now, your past literally harmonizes better. Your future literally harmonizes better. Like you, meaning you start to accept your past better and you accept your future better.
So
Um,
true.
yeah, no, it's so important as well, in my opinion, because it has like most of the turmoil, in my opinion, comes from like people not being comfortable with themselves, and they're like kind of it's in a way insecure, but I always say doubtful, right? So it's like they're really insecure because they're
Afraid.
filled with all these things. Yeah, they're afraid. Um, yeah, because society
Oh
kind
my.
of told them to be afraid because they need things in order to be successful, but they're already successful. We're all already perfectly imperfect, living on Earth. We don't need things to be successful.
And I can see
Uh,
how, and this is going into the conspiracy thing, I can see how the people, and again, it's not any specific people, it's just people, these people have changed throughout the course of history, but, greed does something to the human heart. This is a very, and this is why it was so, why Jesus' message took off, is because it's so true, and why people would want to suppress the truth to this.
well, that's where it is a huge threat in
Yes.
quotes, to like global powers and governmental powers, because what it does is it really embodies the individual. It lets them know like they're in charge of their life.
Is
And
it
that's
too
why I think it's
late?
wild when people vote for someone. It's like you voted for that person to like run your life. What are you doing? I've never voted in my life. I don't do
Wow.
that. But
Interesting.
like, yeah, no, because people are like, I support him and I support. It's like, what? Who? Why are
Right.
you supporting that person? That doesn't make it like support. You support yourself on the earth, right? Like, I don't know. I get what's going on. Obviously, I'm not like that. I'm not completely blinded to like the whole
Yeah.
political system and stuff. But it's like the whole concept of supporting someone is almost like a delusion to begin with. Um, yeah,
And is my way of thinking this wrong? Like to say, I can't help but make it seem like a battle between good and evil, right? It's so seductive to think about it that way. But in essence, we're trying to fight for our freedoms, and while I do that, maybe I lose myself in the way. There's this whole battle of like trying to help you, but then I've lost myself in the way. So then, is it worth it? But is is it too late? Have the global powers, the global corporations, multinational corporations, have they already amassed so much control that we're like we're 2,000 years too late?
I don't think so. Um,
I
I
love that.
think that the future is very fluid. The past is very fluid. Um, there's only now, and like they might always have that control, but not over the individual. So they might have that control. But that doesn't mean I need to keep watching the TV and listen to their nonsense. Um, they might have that control there, but I'm over here.
Mm.
Like for people that are ready to wake up, they'll wake up,
Oh
and they
yes.
won't have control over them. But as far as like the cycle, I mean, it might just continue to cycle. I don't,
Right.
people, you can't. It's almost like that's why I always go back to so it's a Star Wars. Like Luke Skywalker has to like kill himself almost like his greatest demon,
Yes.
in order to actually become the Jedi Master. Like only
Right.
you can free yourself from your greatest doubts.
100%.
Yeah,
And then as multinational corporations amass more power though, couldn't the fractals that they create become more it's already pervasive in our lives. Like it couldn't it become more pervasive and it's harder to find truth?
definitely. Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, living within those are, I don't know. Yeah, so it definitely is harder, but at the same time, I feel like there's more of a driving force to get there.
Right.
Right?
Cuz truth being unaligned with truth, you become more anxious and it
It's like a
becomes more.
spring. Like they
Yes.
try to push you over here, but really, if they let go, you just snap right back. Like
Oh, I love it. It's
so,
that's
the
so
second they
true.
stop that, it's like you'll fall right back into like being a natural human.
Oh
Um,
my
do
gosh. I
you
feel
mind
like
if
that's
I let you use the restroom real quick? I'm good to keep
abs-
going for a little bit.
yeah, I'm down. Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'll be right back. Give me 5 minutes. 30 seconds and I'll be good.
Take your time. I got to connect my AirPods.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to speak to me, Cool.
Absolutely, man. Hold on, what's going on here?
All right, here we go. Yeah, I mean, so much of what you're saying makes so much sense just based on intuition, which is I love when things make sense based off intuition.
Right. Um, so do you think it might make sense to show some of the
Yeah,
models?
absolutely. You
Okay.
know what model, like some of them were like, I mean, they're very complex, like they're very intuitive, but it's like I'm not a scientist per se or any scientifically inclined at all. The one that made sense a lot was here, I'll add sh screen sharing. Um,
Because I think the models really help people understand like the different realms.
yeah,
Like how
absolutely.
there's actually like a denser realm and like a less dense realm.
And that's so funny because I was literally just about to ask you that. Um, you said if a higher realm had harmonized to create us,
Right.
then how is our realm not automatically harmonized? If we came from a higher realm that was perfectly harmonized, and if we're a creation of that, why aren't we perfectly harmonized beings?
Because I would say, okay, so I mean that it's all kind of speculation, right? But like we have a natural node of manifestation based off of that higher energies. Essentially, like the easiest way to explain it physically is to say the earth goes around the sun. We're kind of stuck to the earth, but within the earth's flow itself, we have our own wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations. So it's
Okay.
like if you wanted to think of the outer realms in an easier physical way, you could say it would be like the sun and the earth. And then we would be a creation of the earth almost at that
Mm,
point. But I like to say more like the vortex of time, because at the end of the day, our entire 4D experience is being like manifested from that fifth dimension. And that's why we have the gravity that pulls us to the earth. But other than the gravity, so the bigger flow of space basically puts us on earth, right? And then from there, that's where it's almost like sin gets involved. But I don't want to say it's sin, but it's like the creations of man, the wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations create the pacing motions from there. And those create those like different flows of space on a smaller scale.
no, that's actually that helps paint the picture, right? Say, or it's basically the needs, right? The needs of humans.
Yeah, and it's also just natural physics. I mean, like the sun is spinning and has a flow of space around it. The earth is orbiting the sun and has a flow of space around it. And then so like we're
Mm,
in that no matter what kind of thing. And then like we have our stillness, but now we have our own wants and don't wants that create flows of space within that natural flow. And it's all just energy relationships.
that just clicked with me there. Okay,
Yeah, it's a real physical way to see what I'm talking about. Like it's all just energy relationships. I mean, at the end of the day, it's
absolutely.
things orbiting things. Like,
Then
and
how
that's
does our consciousness, it blows my mind. Like, how are we supposed to think about these? Like, why can't we grasp these ideas just like straight up? Like,
just
why is it so
naturally,
hard?
right?
Yeah.
I think we do, and that's even like what it comes down to. Like John Searle kind of always just followed his heart and the things he knew. You say Jesus
Yeah.
always just kind of followed his hearts and the thing he knew. For me, I've always kind of just followed what I've known to be true to me in my dreams. Everything else is a delusion created by man. Um,
Oh,
so it's like things orbit. We orbit the center of Earth. Earth orbits the sun. The sun orbits the galaxy. Galaxy orbits time. Like that's the easiest way for me to describe it.
I know, I totally get what you're saying. I totally get
Yeah.
it.
And based off of the accelerated frame of motion is how that energy is perceived by our consciousness. So like energy between us and the center of time is somewhat being crunched to us, creating bits of matter. And then energy on the opposite side is being stretched away, creating light. And so when it comes to the dimension of density, it's like literally the galaxies and the stars are as close as the atoms below us.
Right. That's so
What we have
interesting.
is, yeah, our perception is just being stretched on one end and crunched on the other.
So are we special?
And
It
we're
makes
in a
it sound
very,
like
what do you mean?
it makes it sound like we're in a different situation than potentially other things.
Well, I don't know if we're special in that sense or not. And I really don't, I think matter will look like matter in those denser realms too, but just not to us. Like it's all about energetic relationships. And our universe is literally just a field of energy that has the same relative frame of motion that we do. And so when you think about like inner realms and outer realms, they're just in a tighter orbit or a further away orbit. So I think that if you're in an outer realm, you would still be experiencing matter of the outer realm. And if you're in the inner realm, you'd still have that energetic relationship to the energy of that inner realm. So like matter is matter to us, matter would be matter to them, matter to the inner would be matter to the inner. But like the inner to us is just energy and the outer to us is just energy because they're not properly harmonizing with the same flows of space that create our perceptions. It's all about harmonization and like relative motion of energy.
So someone on there, because I'm gonna try to apply all of this. So on my daily life, I should just try to be living in the best harmony I can of course, in the now, but then of course I have to think my day through, right? Like maybe that's not even the right way to think about it. It's like because in order to get that picture that you were talking about of the state you want to be in, you actually have to get there again, right? And I'm not there always.
You have to
So
be
I have to
there.
go I have to go pray or meditate or go for a run and get to that spot. And I mean, I love it, but it's just
A letting
I got
go is huge. The letting go is huge because you'll naturally drift back to your golden spot. But at the same time, you gotta let go, but not into like someone else's delusion.
Very
And so
true.
that's where it's challenging. I mean, you almost will go broke. Like you almost will like, no, I mean, I'm just kind of half joking, but like, it's very challenging to get to be in a golden spot in a society that we have. It's not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
Uh,
Like, I wonder if is it possible to be a billionaire and be ever in your golden spot, or do you have to completely compromise yourself?
well, that's where, I mean, if you're going to end up going, because you kind of mentioned earlier, it's almost like a battle of good versus evil. And so it's almost like you have to create that choice. Are you going to end up being selfish in a way, or are you going to be selfless, right? So it's almost like that choice of like service to others versus service to self. And when you're service to others, it's not necessarily your service to others, your service to the greater flow. And when you're service to self, you're like service to yourself. Meaning, so a billionaire could be service to self in a way, but always, so they're always going to remain disconnected from the greater flow. So I don't know. I really don't know. But then again, like, yeah, no, I really don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious. None of the prophets, none of the ones we respect, were living in mansions.
So I mean, that mansion is the heaven that is on earth, that is earth.
Right. Oh, maybe
yeah, no, having to live in the mansion. That's where I always used to say to my friends, like, the earth is my home. I'm always home because when I look at the stars, it's always the same stars. Like the earth is always the same earth. My body is the same body. I'm always home.
Oh my gosh. That goes back to the Napoleon and Jesus thing. Napoleon's trying to create his heaven on earth, but that's all a delusion.
Because heaven already is on earth, right? And like the more we create, the more pebbles we're tossing into like a distortion that won't sustain. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying like get rid of all technology, right? I'm saying like we need to combine what we've learned from our technologies to what we've learned from our prehistoric spirit. We need to combine the two and move forward from there, right?
Just like Lou has a great analogy to that. I don't know if you've heard it, like two bottoms of the pyramid. on one side of the bottom you have religion, on one side of the bottom you have science, and they couldn't
Yeah,
be more different when you're at the base. But as you climb up, you see that they're the same exact thing. So we have to find a way to get to that point where we're not idolizing technology, but also not living completely free of technology.
exactly. That's really what you kind of just said is perfect, where it becomes the idolization, like that becomes your will to live, right? The technology. It's like, technology is secondary to then the greater flows of reality. Like, I think that's important, like really important. Like, you can still have all those toys and fun stuff, no problem. But like, if that's your driving force of mate selection or your driving force for decisions in life, it might be a problem, right? Like
Right.
at that point, it might become a problem. I don't know.
Maybe the way that you do it, and this is a thought I've had ever since 10 months ago, is I'm going to try to live my life, but I'm going to have my intention be that I live in truth. So for a little bit, I tried to become like a pro triathlete, but I wanted to do everything the right way, even if it took 10 times longer. Um, but again, I think along that path, it might not end up taking 10 times longer because synchronicities will happen, but they can only happen if you do it the right way and live in alignment with truth. So it's this crazy thing of letting go to allow things into your life, which I've experienced plenty of times to know that that's a very real thing. It's
Yeah,
just so hard to do.
it is. No, it totally is. And like, I have you have, and that's where you'll be presented with choices. At the end of the day, like thinking too much on those choices, it creates an anxiety because you're looking too far into the future and you're not taking the obvious next step that's right in front of you.
Mm,
It's hard for me to explain a lot of times, but I always go back to like my own trainings, and it's like for me, the next step is obvious. Like there's a lot of choices that are maybes, but the next step is very obvious. Like the thing I'm doing next is very obvious. I don't know. So that's where you don't really have to always know the end result. You know you're gonna get there. But like
right.
you just said, the intention, right? So put out the intention of what you're trying to achieve and then almost let go and let it happen.
Hmm.
But it's hard to say like what works best for someone else might not work best for a different person. I don't know.
But I think the answer will always become obvious once you get to that state in meditation, like that the answer becomes obvious. It's you trying to fight it, then you go, well, I don't know well, you knew what you were supposed to do last night when you meditate, but now you're just denying that feeling.
Exactly. And it's for me, it's always at the end of the day, it's follow your heart. Like that's
Yeah.
the answer. Yeah, because the heart is essentially like what I call the sixth sense almost, or the seventh sense, is our sense of potentiality. Because like imagine we're a single-celled organism, right? And we all we
Yes.
have is wall or no wall as far as like our perception. And then we
Mm.
gain taste and smell. And so it's like you have wall, no wall, taste good, taste bad. And then you get the ability of sound, you get the ability of light. But at the end of the day, our sense of potentiality basically comes from love or no love. That's like us against a wall. So you either have love and you have freedom, or you have no love and you're against the wall. And so it's
Mm.
like when you follow your heart, you end up going to where there's greater potentialities for yourself. And so it's I think of it as our most advanced sense, the sense of love. So it's like that is the direction towards your greatest potential. For me, it's
Holy
obvious, right?
crap.
But not everyone sees it like that. And so you have to
But
be
it's
careful.
true. But it's so true. That's the thing.
uh,
It doesn't just apply to you and not someone else. I mean, it's the golden rule. It's like the underlying truth. It's just how do you get that message to people so that they see it, trust it, and then try it out for themselves so then it becomes real, right? Nothing The only reason I found my faith 10 months ago is not because I had a life of indoctrination, is because it became real to me. That's why I was like, if someone experienced what I experienced, they would know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I've had to
Um,
say the same thing too. It's like if you had been in my shoes, you would be doing exactly what I'm doing right now. Like, trust me,
right.
it's the obvious next step. Like, yeah,
Yeah, that's what and then the more I read into it, I was like, there has to be other people out there who are on this line of thought. And it turns out there's plenty. You just don't read about it, right? So like even Isaac Newton, he knew that there was a God. That's why he wrote his famous paper to
most of
prove
those
that
scientists always talk about at the end of the day, there's God or something. It's like,
right.
yeah, something had to have done this because they would never be thinking of outside the box to begin with if all they did was believe in what they were taught, right? Like if all you ever do is, I mean, I'm not saying math and science and all that's wrong by any means. I'm saying like they're very applicable to our physical reality and all that stuff, but it isn't the final end all or be all. It's just tools that are used to create a result.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it is reality or something like that, or those are limitations.
And maybe why a lot of those scientists, like tons of them, Galileo, Copernicus, a lot of them were deists at least. But maybe it's because at that point in time there wasn't as many fractals of human existed, so they were able to align with truth closer. When now you can't find barely any scientists that will admit that their faith in God, because there's so many
No,
fractals.
apparently they'd be so scared, right? They'd be like, no, you
Yeah,
can't. You're a scientist. You can't believe in God.
right.
Yeah, no, it's totally like they've created a division between the two where they really are the same. And that's why it's like, I write this in one of my philosophical discussions. It's like faith and beliefs and good intentions really have no place in scientific exploration, which is one of the problems, like because we have this scientific materialistic mind and we have like a natural spirit mind, and almost like we've had this shift in natural selection where we used to be very spiritual and caring, but we've shifted to this like materialistic thing. So it's like there's been a shift in natural selection, like for our choices in mate selection to begin with. And so like I talk about that and how like there's the shift is going to go back towards the spiritual side a little bit.
I
But
hope.
yeah, that goes into
Do,
it.
do you where does all of the where does because technically we don't need anything. We could pray and reach it. Where do psychedelics find their way into this? Are they just a distraction?
I somewhat think so, but at the same time, I really don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've stayed away from it because they're not sustainable. It's like you find your golden spot or whatever, and I mean, you could maybe do that on psychedelics. I don't know, but I think most people are completely out of their minds. Not out of their minds, but it's you. For me, it's like you have to stay in touch with the physical reality still. Um, Not saying you have to, but I think a lot of people become disconnected while they're on the drug, right?
Right.
Afterwards, they might have had some type of epiphany or awakening. But if you were to say, okay, take a mental snapshot of that state, okay, now go back to that state. Can you still function within society? If you can, then kudos to you and bravo. But like, I don't think many people do.
And I think a
Um,
lot of times psychedelics reveal to people about states that are outside of the state we're in right now. So it's important that you
right.
find truth within your day-to-day life. It's great if that revealed a truth to you about something else, but that's not part of our day-to-day life, or we can
No,
still find truth.
but it is good though, like you're saying, because it is a window to see that there are these other truths and there are these other experiences. And like that's almost what led me to understanding that the denser realms have to do with those faster brain harmonics. I mean, because when people have the out of body experience, they go into that 80 harmonics. When people are doing like DMT and stuff like that, they're at 80 harmonics.
Mm,
And so like that 80 harmonics in the brain is towards the next layers of experience. They're denser experiences, more energy is packed packed into that space.
right.
Uh, yeah. So like I'm not saying they're bad or good really. Just, I don't, I more just like to meditate, things like that. I guess I get into those faster, you could say states of consciousness through music, like mostly by playing piano. I'll get
Mm-hmm.
into those kinds of states. Then also doing like extreme sports will get me into those kinds of states.
Yeah.
Um, but also just sitting quietly and then having like a really vivid meditation will do it too. Um,
That's
yeah,
why
there's
when
all
I
kinds.
tell That's
Yeah,
why when I tell people when I train for triathlons, it does a great thing by shedding away the ego. You cannot be a triathlete and have an ego because your ego actually takes energy to feed your ego. And
right.
when I train, my ego will go in there and then I won't be able to finish the workout. The only way I can finish the workout is if I let go of my ego
It's
so I can have
funny you
my
say that. No, it's funny you say that because I think about like I used to think a lot about like why do we even eat food, right? And it's like why do our cells even get sick to begin with? And like for me, it was like it had a lot to do with ego. It's like the
mm,
whole time you're trying to create this distorted reality, and trying to hold on to like shapes and postures that aren't really natural, and so your body's like always becoming diseased, and now you need to eat food to replenish your energy. And like you're talking about like how if you remove your ego when you're running and stuff like that, you can last longer. I think it's
oh,
somewhat relates there.
if anything, this just reveals to us our potential.
Yep.
Like, even if we can't manifest it right now, like, if you were the perfect human being, then you should be able to tap into that. Maybe people have. Hold on, let me just finish.
Yeah, I think there's people that might have already, you know, like Wim Hof. I'm not saying he's like the perfect human, but like Wim Hof can like, have you heard of Wim Hof?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so like he can control his body temperature pretty good. There's other yogis and stuff. Like I've seen like photos of Shaolin monks like sitting in a fire, you know, like they're not getting hot, they're staying nice and cold. That was something I used to practice too, like just going out in the coldest days without a t-shirt kind of thing, like go out in shorts and just stay warm. You know, you control your reality. um
Dude, that's so
yeah,
in a very small scale. I'm someone who's always a bunch of people will relate to this. People might think like, what does this to do with anything they're talking about? Someone who always is really sensitive to the cold, and my hands would get very cold, my feet would get very cold,
but
and that would cause. Then I'd be thinking about it. I'd be anxious thinking about it, and it would just go off of my mind. I'd sit down, and in a relaxed state, my hands would warm up. But if I would stay in a tension state, my hands would always stay cold. But in that relaxed state, and you wonder if you can get so relaxed that you begin
yeah,
to control things on a different level.
yeah, I think I think much of it is the placebo effect, like a lot of it. Like when I was teaching taekwondo, you're working with like 3 to 5 6-year-old kids sometimes, and it's like depending on how you react to when the kid messes up is how they're going to react, right? So it's like if you react a certain way, they're going to cry, they're going to do all this stuff. You react another way, they're going to think you're tough and like really strong. So it's like the kid is creating it, but he doesn't know he's creating it because he's just feeding off of what you're telling him. So when you learn that you're kind of telling yourself that you're cold, you can well tell yourself, hey, I'm hot. It's actually really hot, you know. um, the placebo effect is huge, and that's why it even goes into the Stanford prison guard experiment. Are you familiar with that?
You mentioned in one of your books, right?
Yeah, so basically
Yep.
like they had students pretend to be guards, other students pretend to be prisoners, but they had to cut the experiment short because the guards were beating the prisoners were refusing to eat. They were playing out the roles of the assumptions and the expectations of the experiment. Like that was only after 7 days.
Right.
um, so like the placebo effect transfers over to the roles people play in life too. Like if I'm a garbage man, oh, I'm a garbage man, I act like this. Oh, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm this race, I act like this. If I'm this much money or whatever, I act like this. You know, like so people start to fulfill the roles that have been projected, and most of those projected roles come from media, and I'm not going to say fake stories, but like pretty much fake lives, right? Like everything you see,
Absolutely.
like like Full House is something I grew up on, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like a fake life. um it's a life that everybody wishes they could have, but it's not really a real life. um
Yeah,
yeah,
and I'll put it. I think it's people will. Some people will be triggered by this, but I think it's just absolutely fact. The reason we have such mental health issues in this country and physical health issues is because we live in within these fractals of
yeah,
existence that just aren't true to us. And I think deep down, everyone hearing this knows that to be true, but they're just so afraid of letting go of those things.
I think it might actually be hard to find someone who says no, 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 we're supposed to have all these wild things and they make us healthy. Like I think it would be really hard to find someone that claims all these little pacing motions make you healthier. Like,
Right.
I mean, like that would be a challenge. I don't think you could find someone that thinks that way. So it's like like you're saying, we all already know that it's
Yeah.
unhealthy for us to like try to do these standards, but it's so challenging not to, right? Because you're trying to live up to the expectation, and at the end of the day, it comes down to mate selection, because you're trying to like get married, you're trying to have kids. It's like the ultimate driving force of humanity. And so in order to be the best mate, you need to have
Hmm.
like these things, but those things really don't make you a better person or a better father or a better mother. Being a
No.
better, I don't really know, but from my understanding, like being a better father and mother has to do with being a caring person, right? Which isn't really what um, striving for materials teaches you. It teaches you
Yeah.
more to be like the man, you know, the hungry shark or whatever.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very backwards. That's why I say there's like a shift in natural selection, and that it's going to end up pacing back towards the spiritual side, just because it won't work. You know.
You mean people will become more on both sides, that a woman will become more in tune to looking for someone who's connected to themselves and vice versa?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, people are going to be looking towards someone that are more connected to the earth versus someone that's more caught up in a fractal of a human creation. I
I
just think
hope
that,
so, because that's
yeah,
what I'm looking for right now, and it is hard to find. I'm not even actively looking for it just because I
yeah.
know it's so few and far between, but that would be
That's
amazing.
been my greatest challenge. I mean, every now and then I connect with someone like that, but not, like you said, it's
Right.
very rare. Yeah.
And that's what I was just thinking today. The typical thing is always like, oh, try to find someone at a bar. But I was thinking, no, the way I'll probably find someone is probably like running on a trail. That sounds so creepy. And then find someone else running on a trail,
Tell me
running
what
in an,
happens to you tomorrow.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but someone else like who you could tell their worldview based off of what they're doing already.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't really know what they want to begin with. I mean, it's not like I really know what I just want like peace. I want comfort. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if other people know what they want, but I feel like that's kind of what leads them on these um paths of like almost self-destruction in a way, but paths of enlightenment as well. Right? We all
Right.
have our own paths and like ways to get to where we're going. Um, yeah.
Isn't that hard? Isn't it gonna be hard to find someone because you have to find someone who's willing to look within, but also be fine with kind of changing their, because you have to be fine with changing your worldview, right? Because in one day you might find out that you're sucked into one worldview, and then have to find your way out of it. I think most people in this life just, find themselves into, oh, I'm the going to sporting events types thing, and I find someone who's into that, and that's the rest of our 80 years of life.
Right. No,
But
yeah, no, and what you're saying makes a lot of sense too. And at the end of the day, it comes down to like respect and acceptance. Because there will be all these little things that I end up finding that I like. Like I like, for example, this coffee cup is the one that I like the most. Like, right. But someone else might like a different cup. I'm just being like picking something random. But at the end of the day, that person needs to understand what, he likes that cup. He can have his choice. He can do his thing. We can still be friends, like you can have your worldview. I can have my worldview. We can still be friends. They're just these things, they're not really making us different. They're just like the tiniest little bit of you that's different. If even,
right.
I don't know, at the end of the day, we're all kind of like the same thing. We're all stardust to keep it simple, right? Like,
Yeah,
um,
that's so true. Yeah, you want to pull up, I don't know if you have any ready. I would, yeah, definitely pull up some of your stuff. I'm sure people that would help give people a better image of what you're talking about, because again, as I can't help stress this enough, people, but for anyone who's listening to this has no idea what's going on in the UFO discussion right now, you know, there's basically government officials coming out basically saying 2022 is going to be a big year of disclosure, and it's already happened. And I would encourage anyone to go look at some of those interviews where Lou Elizondo has talked about um, what they know so far, and basically he seems to be like someone who's doing the soft disclosure for everyone. But what Alexei demonstrates in a lot of his diagrams and books, coincidentally not, probably not, aligns with a lot of the stuff that could potentially be happening with UAPs, just in this phenomenon that we don't necessarily understand.
can you see this one right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this one kind of ties it together nicely. But basically, you could say we live in the universe, right? And our universe is basically orbiting a greater structure. And we have, so our entire physical experience is kind of blipping in and out of solidity at all times. Um, and so we're kind of bubbling up like a soup basically, but our layer that we experience is a certain distance from the center of time. And that relates to our alpha, beta, and slow gamma states of consciousness, which are centered around 20 hertz. And so that's a certain distance, a certain velocity, and all that stuff. And when it comes to inner and outer realms of experience, they're basically 1/4 of the diameter as far as human perception and consciousness. Right here, you can see that I have it at like 1/100th the diameter. This is just like a generic inner world would be that. But like, so what I'm getting at is that like 20 times 2 is 40. but at a 40 hertz center, you would have 4 times bigger. So that, like the diameters aren't to scale in this drawing. Let me put it that way. But there's the outer realm of experience, which would be like the lower verse. And then you have our universe, which is our experience. And then you have the noviverse, which is more inward. And at the most primitive and raw experience, we have a consciousness perceiving a field of energy. And so as our entire experience is orbiting, based off of relative motions, our perceptions are being stretched into existence. So literally, if I'm in this spot right here and I'm orbiting to the left, this energy right here that is in between me and the center of time would be crunched to me, and the energy behind me is being stretched away. And then as I leave that spot, energy is somewhat reverting back to normal. It's basically being magnified into existence as we orbit around. And so our perception of the now is literally being stretched into existence based off of our distance from the center of time. And so you have, if you're closer to the center, you have more of a, like matter is denser, essentially. And if you're further away from center, matter is less dense. And so you have less dense realms of experience and more dense.
And so you're basically, and then this image is good because you're basically saying that in this thing that we call life is a lot more diverse than we can. Our universe is only a sliver what is really going on in the bigger picture of things.
Yeah, our universe is the surface of this green, like literally just the green shell is our universe. And it goes infinitely out, as far as like in the lower reverse direction, but also infinitely in to an infinitely small. And that would be like when people tunnel into 0 point energy, you're going towards the center, that golden spot right there in the middle of time. And that's what I was saying. Like there's these different realms of experience, the lower verse and the noviverse side. And the lower verse side is the more angelic side, you could say, and the noviverse side would be more of the demonic side. And so when people
what would be examples of those experiences per se? And like, how does someone put themselves in a position to have those experiences with a greater realm? Like, what does that look like?
Well, at this point, it would look like a magnetic vortex, like a vortex of energy, like a spiral of light is an easy way of putting it. And so if you're experiencing a lower verse, you would have something that's bigger getting focused to a point. So you can imagine this bigger area now gets focused to a point and it falls within our perception. Or a point gets focused to a bigger area and that falls within our perception. And that's how they would harmonize with our consciousness in order for us to actually perceive them. It's all just fields of energy orbiting time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And yeah, so like, I mean, that's pretty much the easiest way to describe it right there. And so there's alignments that occur, right? If you could say our entire perception goes from delta to fast gamma, which is 1 hertz to 80 hertz. You could say that 80 hertz, we're already overlapping with like angels and stuff like that. At 1 hertz, you're closer to the greatest ohm of reality, is the easiest way to put it. And yeah, it's actually like a really simple model. As energy drifts inwards, it follows like a nice spiral of perception, and we gain higher harmonics of conscious density.
I hate to keep relating this to like good and bad, but that's how it seems to when people try to discuss these things. Naturally, that's what we do: a good experience, a bad experience, an overwhelming experience, an opening experience. Is that potentially where they got the idea of heaven and hell? Is a greater realm and then a more dense realm? When you say dense realm, it sounds almost like hell, like a very dense realm with dense experiences.
Yeah, like dense as in, and like as in our physical experience, like relating to our physical lives, it's actually like smaller, like very, very microscopic in size. But like it can be exploded outward to be as big as our perception, you know. So they're all realms that exist within points. It's so hard to describe.
I know on your podcast with Artist and Tony and Chris was potentially saying that there's some theories that the UAPs could potentially be magnifying and becoming from a denser realm. Is that what he was saying?
Yeah,
they could be growing.
That's kind of what we're getting at for sure, is that they're coming from the denser realms of experience, which would be like the future, as far as, because there's only now. This entire structure shows the greater now, and it shows how energy comes in from the outside and from the inside to create our now moment.
Right.
But based off of our stillness is the habitats of the denser realms. And so when like UAP come from denser realms of experience, they're like being magnified out into our perception. So they come from both sides. They can be bigger getting smaller or smaller getting bigger. But when it comes to tapping into like 0 point energy and using those types of energy devices, what people need to realize is that they're tunneling into these denser realms and they're harmonizing our layer of the universe to these denser realms. So like almost anti-gravity technology creates tunnels into denser realms of experience.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's where it's like people need to understand that our synchronization, our harmony, our love, our potentiality literally creates those denser experiences. And that we're also tunneling into those denser experiences when we use 0 point anti-gravity tech. So in order for us to actually like experience the outer realms and be part of this greater galactic neighborhood and all that stuff, we need to realize that our harmony literally determines our potentiality. Like we cannot really travel through those denser realms of experience if we're all very pacey with our wants and don't wants.
It seems so contradicting because in order to even spread that message, you have to, because you think people who understand that, then they live in that understanding that this is the truth, and you don't necessarily want to push that message. It's only when you're against that do you want to push a different agenda. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be, yeah, because yeah, the further you are from like the 0 point, the more energy you have to push essentially. Totally. I get what you're saying. And like if everyone already thought that, there'd be no reason to even say any of this.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah. But since like not many people do, there's more reason to.
absolutely.
Uh, yeah, no, so it's you could say right now I'm using my ego to steer through the delusion. I'm still trying to free myself and everyone else because
Right.
I literally can't exist at my golden spot if everyone around me is filled with wants and don't wants and assumption and expectation.
So that this is really interesting. This goes back to what we were saying a little bit ago, where when you try to help someone, you kind of have to stand in their space,
Yeah, you
which
have to
is you
jump
kind
in
of,
their spiral. Yeah.
oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why it's like
Wow.
super challenging because you got if you're trying to connect everyone to the greater flows and stuff like that, it becomes it's you're fighting. That's where it is that whole battle, like you're saying, of good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like
like
it's literally like Frodo carrying the ring through Mordor.
so when I first started my work, I used to call myself a modern day samurai, and the skate case, which is my skateboard, is my sword, and I go
Yeah,
around slaying.
yes.
I would slay doubt with my dreams.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
that was like my metaphor. I would always just tell myself in my head when I first started like 10 years ago. Like the skate
Holy
case is my
crap.
sword, and I'm a modern day samurai warrior slaying doubt.
It makes so much sense. I really do. That's how you know there's truth to this when it's not just one dimensional. There's so many applications to it.
Yeah, I mean, and this really does. I think it also helps explain like why people think the universe is expanding, but also gives us like great insight into like the different densities of experience. And it gives us potential. Like we're no longer stuck thinking the speed of light is a limit.
Hmm.
We realize that's like sorry, let me get rid of those. That we
Lou,
realize that's like a limitation of human perception and not really reality.
the thing, and again, because it's so important, it's where we are, which is why I keep bringing it up right now. The time of disclosure is happening right now, and you wonder if the powers that be are trying to do everything they can to make sure that this because if you think about it, potentially they've been doing that for 2000 plus years. If there's Vatican archives, Lou mentioned a couple times he went and read some Vatican archives, which they've been aware of UAPs for 2000 plus years.
Yeah.
um
Well, it's like controlling of the narrative, right? So if there's this cycle that happens every 2,000 years, everybody naturally wakes up, but they're so used to being told what to believe and what to think. If the government, it's a little speculation. If they're trying to remain in control, then they need to create some type of narrative to control a naturally occurring experience. And so by being like the masters of the experience, we now like stay underneath the control of it.
right.
Yeah.
And I know this is speculation again, and you might not even feel comfortable commenting on this. Do you think that Lou does he have good intentions and does he have good information, or is he another cog in the machine potentially?
I think he might have been a cog in the machine. At this point, he's a cog in like the greater machine of like getting the information out there, really putting his foot down. Because at this point in time, like if it wasn't for his work, Harvard wouldn't have jumped on board, right? You literally now, because of what he's done, Harvard is saying, okay, UAP, we're going to look into him. So no matter what anyone says, like the work that Lou has done has changed the entire game. To where like universities never once touched it, but now you have the most accredited universities and institutions looking into it.
Right.
That's a big step. Like that's overwhelmingly big. People will need to kind of get that. Yeah.
And did it, and you think about it, and if Lou, it's that classic thing, like, oh, if Lou didn't exist, then someone else would have taken the place of Lou because the time was coming for this to happen.
Yeah,
But did
potentially.
it,
I think so. I think that's where it's like you could go down more rabbit holes and stuff, but potentially there was like a treaty that was signed like 50 years ago, and the treaty got. But that's where I say that there's just a natural cycle that happens every 2,000 years, and it's that time anyway. And so no matter what, the disclosure is happening. Yeah, it's not like we can really control it, but we can act like we can act like we are.
Oh, interesting. So can you explain on that a little bit more?
That's what I was getting at. Like, say there's a natural process of like a volcano erupting every 2,000 years, but instead you like say, oh, we're the government and we're gonna plant some dynamite in this volcano and it might erupt. But they already know it's going to erupt no matter what every 2,000 years. So it's like now we're planting these seeds. Oh, there might be these UFO things. Oh, there might be these things. There might be these things. And it's like, well, that obviously happens every 2,000 years. So it doesn't matter what you guys say because this happens every 2,000 years.
Wow. So, but then, okay.
So by trying to control like a disclosure movement, like what do you mean control? Like, no, the connection is direct, you to the universe.
Right. But then let's say, and again, I'm not as versed in this. So after that event or series of events happens, then it becomes the next 2,000 year period. So can't they, after the big event happens and natural disclosure happens, can't they start going, all right, now we're safe again. We can start to reel it back in.
Well, that's where that you control the narrative. This is all speculation, but you control the narrative all the way through the event. Yeah, we detonated the volcano. Now we're going to control the lava flow, and don't worry about it. Anyone, don't worry about any of this.
Right, but that's why it's important that we have the Galileo Project and you doing what you're doing on podcasts and things like this, so that we help diversify the narrative.
Yeah, and that's where, like I said, it's a natural process. I mean, you jumped into it 10 months ago naturally on your own.
Right.
Other people have too. You know, it's not just like a me thing. It's not just like a you thing. It's a thing that is naturally occurring as like our entire universe, the earth and everything, like moves through a different field of space. It's the age of Aquarius.
Oh, okay. It's starting to, and I'm interested in these things, and it still takes a little bit for me. So I can't imagine the average person. So it's starting to make sense to me right now. So, and that might even have to do with the Great Resignation too, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's totally like because they want to resign before like they get in trouble or whatever.
No, like I resigned because I realized I didn't like my job. I was living a lie, and millions of Americans.
Exactly. That has everything to do with like you could say an awakening process of like literally like our energy is drifting into a different energetic flow of space, like, and consciousness gains intelligence as it drifts inwards. So like we're becoming smarter. It's like a natural evolution process. That's the way I see it.
Wow. No, it's I mean it's a really healthy perspective to add to this narrative. Trust me, do not please keep that up, because as Lou said, every direction in that podcast with you, said every direction we go is up.
Right. If we're at the South Pole, every direction's north.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, no, that's totally the way I see it. And like beings naturally gain, there's the different cycles of time. And they've talked about it. Like when I say they, I mean like I think the Mayans even talked about it. Like it's something that's well known. There's like I think the total number is 25,000, like 600 years, the precession. Yeah. But then that gets broken up into like basically specific cycles of like a little bit over 2,000 years. To where
And can you break this down for people? Because now I'm really interested in this. What happens when this change happens? We go into a denser realm experience. We gain knowledge. What happens?
I have a pretty cool 3D model that can explain this.
Absolutely. Yeah, please.
Let me see if I can find it. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, because I've read of your books. I've read Crystal of Time, The Liquid Light State Universe, Your Influence in Space, and then, of course, Physics of Love. And of course, I'm going to have to read those things a few times through. But which one of those, does any of those hit on what's happening right now, or do they all kind of do?
They all lead up to the understanding of the physics of love. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Which talks about the interdimensional alignment, which is why I want to show you this model I have right now. But I'm trying to find the actual model on my computer first. I've got a lot of files I've made.
Is it in the Physics of Love? I have that PDF pulled up.
No, it's not. It's man, it's it's in a 3D model that I just made for like a specific short video, basically. You know, I might be able to find it if I do something different. Let me do something real quick. Minimize that.
Because what you just said there helps clear everything up. I thought potentially what was happening was just something that was, I didn't realize potentially instances were increasing because something is happening within the world. I thought everything that's happening now has been happening for 2,000 years plus.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And it happens in cycles. And so this will show a good way to think of it. Let me do the share screen now. I've got it open. How do I get back to it? Share this. There we go. All right, can you see that?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so basically what I showed in the physics, what I show in the fifth dimension is basically the conscious orbit through density. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
It's not by name. I probably did see it though.
Yeah, so basically, if you think about our consciousness and how we have delta through fast gamma, each one of those basically is a wavelength. And when it comes to light, you know, every wavelength has a certain length. And so when it comes to light being manifested from a fifth dimension into our four-dimensional experience, every frequency has an orbit. And so when you think about the synchronization of human consciousness, you could say that it's a creation of delta through fast gamma being synchronized. And so if you want to relate that to our circadian rhythm, you can actually map out your conscious experience through the field of density throughout the day. So this is a map of your consciousness through your daily orbit of density. So like at midnight, so imagine this purple right here represents your consciousness. And it's a creation of these four energies, delta through beta. And basically this represents midnight. You can see these are all in a line.
Right.
And this next drawing represents, and when you have tidal locking of energy, basically, so for every one time the red orbits, the orange would go 2 times, the green goes 4, the blue goes 8. That's called tidal locking. So if you consider your consciousness is made of the waves that exist within your brain and that they're synchronized through tidal locking of a fifth dimensional vortex, you can map out those spheres of each individual wave. And you see how your conscious experience literally follows the center of mass of these different energies to where there's these different fields. And when it comes to experiencing UAP, a lot of UAP happen around 1:30 in the morning, which is this yellow ring area, and 10:30 at night. That's the theta field. And so like we experience that at 1:30 in the morning and 12:30 at night. And so, okay, now this represents just your normal daily orbit based off of fifth dimensional locking. Okay. And so basically, if you wanted to just kind of move this forward, if this is midnight, this drawing right here would be 6 a.m. And you can see that you have all these 2 in a line. That one's on this side, your red's up top. And now they keep all orbiting, but you see at noon, your consciousness goes back to the left, but your red is on this side, so you don't fall asleep all the way, but you get a little groggy, and then you wake up again. And so that basically shows that your consciousness is like a gyroscope hanging on at a 90-degree angle, like processing through the fluid of time throughout the day. This would be 6 at night. And what's interesting is that 6 at night is the complete opposite of 6 a.m. and noon is the complete opposite of midnight. But the point being is that this tidal locking of energy also happens at those different dimensional levels. So now instead of saying this is just one day, you could say this is a 2,000-year cycle.
Wait, okay. So
this would be our local 4 spheres that create our consciousness, right? The blue, the green, the orange, and the red. But if you want to consider, and that's for one day of time, but if you want to consider a 2,000-year cycle,
right,
it's important to realize that all of the dimensional energies align on a 2,000-year cycle. So now this is our entire universe in a 2,000-year cycle going around. And every 2,000 years, our entire conscious experience gets tugged outwards, meaning this entire purple, relating it to our day, this entire experience gets tugged outwards like that.
Okay.
And so our consciousness will orbit literally in the theta realm, which is like where most UAPs experiences happen. Is that making some sense?
It definitely is. Well, I have so many questions.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead. I mean, that's basically it. So basically this shows like, this is in the 5th dimension, right? And these are, you could consider these entire dimensions. Like this would be a Noviverse realm. This would be a lower verse realm. When our consciousness is close to this line is when we experience a lot of UAP interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so every 2,000 years, just like when all of the spheres align here and you get your consciousness naturally out to one side, every 2,000 years, the bigger realms, the bigger circles also align on the far left. And so our entire conscious experience gets tugged out to a different density of experience.
So you're saying that this has implications on people, whether they, one, realize it or whether they like it or not. This is happening to them just for them existing.
Yes. Yeah, this is totally a natural flow of like anything that's manifesting within our 4-dimensional space is going to be tugged outward. Yeah. So that has to do with like a dimensional alignment and then a possible recrystallization, like an introduction of like the new coming, right? And so during these moments when our consciousness is literally perceiving less dense realms is when something like the Star of David could potentially come into our experience, into our conscious experience of perceiving the manifested realm. Could potentially be like when our entire 4-dimensional locking is further to the west here. In this drawing, further to the left, you know.
And I have so many questions. Is this could potentially be what, and I hate to keep relating it to religion, but I know that's how most people will think about this. Is that what Jesus could have meant when he said, I will be the second coming, right? Like this awareness will be coming again, potentially. Could that be the relationship?
Yeah. It's everyone being connected to the greater flow of reality, but also like the veil being revealed and being able to see through the density of experience. Yeah, if every single person has a UFO experience at the same time, I mean, that's pretty much what we're talking about.
Yes. What is that going to happen? Is that could potentially happen?
My dreams have always been very real. And from my understanding, I mean, that is something that potentially happens. And it's hard to say when and where, but it seems like we're kind of close to that time in reality, like within the next 100 years, maybe, I would think. From my understanding, much closer. But I mean, I don't really know.
It's so, and that scares a lot of people, but I think it's such a beautiful thing because it opens people's perception of reality.
Yeah, I don't want to make claim because it's so hard to claim that this is what's happening. But from my understanding and from everything I've seen, I mean, there are dimensional alignments. Syzygies are a real thing where energy lines up. And the cycle happens every 2,178 years to like 2,000 years-ish. The last one was related to the coming of Jesus, the age of the Pisces. And right now we have the age of Aquarius, which basically just started, if not is starting now. And that should also be related to a great dimensional alignment like this, where literally our entire consciousness is going to be orbiting in a less dense realm of experience.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll be perceiving a different field of energy. Yeah.
My
I mean,
mind is
that's
blown.
just the way I see it. And it really does line up with everything else that I've heard too, which is kind of wild.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why, and again, we have such limited information from the mainstream, but that's why when you hear Lou talk about this, he almost goes like, in one of his interviews, he said the stuff that's been revealed to him, the way to think about it, was something that he never even thought was possible.
Well, yeah, he's the one that brought up the rusty crystals.
Yes.
That blew my mind because that whole thing basically, in my mind, validified, whatever you want to say, the physics of love book, which is basically all related to this concept right here that I'm showing you right now. Like this is basically what the physics of love ends up showing you, is that the age of Aquarius has come. There's dimensional alignments. And with our new understanding of compassion and how we influence the denser realms of experience, we can be better suited for exploring those realms, like meaning using faster than light technologies, anti-gravity technology, things like that. We need to understand that our harmony literally determines our potentiality in a physics point of
Right.
view. Yeah.
Can we utilize those things on an individual basis? Do we have to rely on big money putting this, or can we
No, I
utilize it?
don't think so at all. I think this is all essentially individual basis.
And is that something that you're now exploring more with yourself?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, there's a lot of my work is done in meditation, and I don't, it's kind of private, I guess. I don't like,
Absolutely. You don't divulge anything that's, close to
but
your heart.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, we don't really need the technology because we are the technology.
Yeah, it's so true, because I keep thinking in terms of other people, but it's not about other people per se.
No, that's what's so wild. It's about your connection direct. And then as you remove your spirals of delusion, you connect to greater flows. So you can imagine, you were, say, an individual was addicted to coffee. They remove their coffee addiction. Now they can look at other people. They're addicted to their coffee. They're gonna go get it, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, he's addicted to making money or whatever, trying to live up to that. You literally connect to bigger and bigger flows, to the point where you're like, oh, you're connected to the concept of I am this, or I am human, or I am that, instead of just I am, or a being. Eventually your consciousness gets to connected to the bigger flows, and you see a bigger picture of reality.
So Alexei, I was on that path. I gave up dating around. I gave up partying. I gave up alcohol. I did all of those things. But then to keep going down that path is very difficult.
Yeah, you become disconnected. I mean,
Yeah,
from people, right? Because we're all people at the end of the day.
right.
So I think there is a proper, I mean, I don't really know the answer to that, like, I think everybody has their own levels. My last meditation I was in, I was even telling like Chris Lato and Artist Tony about this. Like it was right before we went on with Lou. I went out, I meditated that night, and I got into really, really deep meditation. I started really thinking about it, and I was like, in myself, I kind of disintegrated. Like my body, my awareness of my body, it's gonna sound really, really woo, but like I completely disintegrated, and I became a vortex. And at that moment, I literally had like a mini panic attack where I had to bring my ego back and recreate my body. So it was like I had reached a moment of dissolved, but I didn't like it. It was
Mm,
scary to me. Like, where'd my body go? Brought it back. Right? I'm not saying I physically dissolved. I didn't have a video camera on me. I don't know. I'm saying
right.
like from my experience, from my perception, I literally like went into like a vortex and then came back, because it was kind of overwhelming. It's like we are literally being manifested from the greater, like we're an overlapping of these two waves, and you're flipping in and out of solidity, and you're a vortex of energy. And like once you can really remove the I am of the human body, Then the next one is you are a vortex of energy, and it's like it can be overwhelming in a sense.
Do you have any meditation tips? I know it's a personal thing, but what are just some like basic what are some basic tips? Or is that the wrong way to think
Breathing.
about this?
I think
Breathe?
breathing is, yeah, for like someone who's just getting into it, I think breathing is important. And what I mean by that is like breathe as deep as possible from like the center point, and I mean like 2 inches below your belly button. Like breathe from there. Bring your stomach, your energy all the way down, and take deep breaths. And then just I think slow breathing, controlled breathing is important. That'll help a lot of people. But what I really like to do is I got into Tai Chi. So like really feeling the energy. And what I mean by that is like, so now you're sitting, you're breathing quiet. On a really windy day, it's really easy to feel the wind blowing past your face, right? But like on a day where there's no wind, can you feel the wind blow past your face? Can you like feel the air? So like feel the air, and then try to feel the objects that are connected to the air. Try to feel like, and then eventually you'll start to feel things you never thought you could. Um, it becomes very awakening in that sense, and you become more connected to just energetic flows.
And is there any, do you ever meditate like late at night?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it kind of it's very interesting, but basically, I did that 9 months out in the woods, and at that point, I was good. If I meditate anymore, I'll end up dissolving into a vortex. I'm just kidding, but like I'm good right now. I'm in a comfortable spot.
Oh, so do you not meditate right now?
No,
Wow.
no, that's what I'm saying. Like once you get, like I was there growing up pretty much, and like once you get there, you're there. Like you're good. It has a lot to do. I don't know if you've ever heard of like solar gazing as well,
No.
where like if you stare at the sun, you do this practice a certain number of times, you have a certain like awakening, and you really don't have to do it again. Like once you can see something, it's almost like ignorance is bliss. Like once you
Right.
can see something, it's hard to unsee it. And so that's where
Wow.
it can be almost dangerous to connect to your golden spot if you're not ready for it.
Right, right, right. Well, no, just like
Especially, I was gonna say, if you're filled with a lot of like, if someone's filled with a lot of don't wants and they connect to their golden spot, that could be a really traumatic experience, because now all their don't wants are going to manifest.
mm,
So it's like kind of remove those don't wants and really focus on your wants, or your acceptances before getting to that golden spot. Uh,
right. It's very true because ever since that series of experiences, really 10 months ago for me, like my life will never be the same again. Um, but I know I'm still holding on to things, so that's the other thing too. It's like,
yep.
and again, the ego part wants Lou to reveal that there's aliens and there's all these cool things, so I can get wrapped up in all the hype and whatnot. But that doesn't change my experience with truth, right? That at the end of the day, it's all revealing the nature of truth.
Yeah, no, it's wild to me too, because I, I always was more on the lines of that they're actually extraterrestrial beings coming from another planet. And I'm not saying that's not the case, but from my understanding now, it's more of densities of experience as opposed to like actual other planets, is like the bigger picture behind it.
Right.
And that's what
And
can
I
be
think
like overwhelming for so many, because it goes into like the realms, and that does relate to like religion and stuff.
absolutely. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, once they start hearing more about this, they're going to want to meditate with the intention to reach entities. That's not the way to think about it, is it?
No, that's not a bad way to think about it.
Okay.
I mean, that's what people do when they pray, right?
Right.
But it depends on like what you're praying to. I mean, I don't know. That's where it's like there's the greater flow, and then are you trying to like pray to a big being? I don't know. That's why I always just think connect to like the flow of energy. But
Right. Well,
yeah,
when I pray, it's not a person. It's I try to connect with things that I know are connected to truth, compassion, love, serving,
right.
kindness, all of those things, and try to remove. That's why when Søren Kierkegaard, he said, I pray to remove, to change the nature of my heart, not to gain anything. I pray to let go. And that's what I try to do. I try to recognize the transgressions in me and connect with the truths. Um, dude, I've absolutely loved this so much. I'm gonna have to split this into like part one, part two, and part three.
Very cool.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome, man.
dude, I know, which I love. Like that, just it's amazing spreading the good news, and I just love this information so much, dude. I'm going to be following you so closely, and I hope that is Lou gonna put, and maybe you don't want to talk about this too much, but I hope Lou can like put you in touch with people at the Galileo Project that your input,
Yeah.
getting to Lou is like how amazing is that? Like
Yeah,
that's
no,
huge.
I asked him too. I said, do you mind running it by Abby? And he said he would. So I'm actually just waiting for my books to come back in stock, which should be by the end of like next week at the latest. And I'm gonna send one off to him. So
Absolutely.
it'll be on Abby's desk hopefully by the end of the month or next month.
Dude, that would be absolutely amazing. I'll do everything I can to just help spread the message. Just because, and it's the message of truth, right? Like I had experiences and I was like, what Alexei is talking about rings true to what I know to be true.
Yep.
It's not like I'm trying to step into your realm. It's like it rings true to what I already know to be true.
Well, that's the thing too. It's like it was hard for me to believe, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it was information that's kind of been channeled in a way, but confirmed by like meeting with certain people, confirmed with the synchronizations, confirmed with like the stuff outside and you'll see a shooting star, boom,
Mm,
confirmed. It's been confirmed, and it's almost overwhelming at times, um, because I have to like have faith and I have to believe, and if I tell someone, sometimes it doesn't work out. So it's
mm.
like I need to have faith, I need to believe. And that's where it's like, so that's where I actually spent a good amount of time getting back to my golden spot, like I mentioned, meaning reconnecting with my family, getting right with my, not that I was wrong with them, but actually getting a better relationship with my parents, my brother, just the whole flow of my natural creation, it became really important to me.
I
Um,
totally relate to that.
yeah, because that's like your root and that's where you grow from almost. Yeah, so it's huge as far as the golden spot connection, I think. Yeah.
Dude, I absolutely love it, dude. Thank you so much for coming on. And anything I can do to help, just let me know. You have to, I know you probably don't want to, you have to create a TikTok because your stuff, you need to get it out to the masses, get it out to the people.
It'll
Uh,
happen.
yeah,
You can be the official TikTok, because it's the same thing. Like you said, it's just a message or whatever. Like it's
right.
not like it's me, and it's the same thing Lou's saying. It's the same thing. I don't know if it's what Lou's saying, but Lou's hinting towards it. It's the same thing that lots of people are saying, right? It's not just like me by any means, I don't think. You
No,
know,
definitely not. But it's
yeah.
your voice. Because I'll butcher it if I try to explain it, but you say it so succinctly and nicely.
Yeah.
But Alexei, dude, I really appreciate it. It was amazing talking to you.
Yeah, no worries. And you'll have yours soon. I swear it's
Aw-
coming.
Awesome, dude. I'm gonna tear through it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, and that's one of the greatest challenges though is actually moving forward with like the visions and the dreams that people have, right? Because they wake up, they know these things, but they're not supposed to do it because they're supposed to go to work or they're supposed to do certain
Right.
things. So it's good to have.
That's why it scares me to even step into it. But I know it's true, so I'm in that constant battle of doing it.
Well, and that's where it goes back to Bob Marley. Like emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
I mean, we know it's true. That's the problem.
Yeah,
We know it's true. Like we all know. Like,
yeah,
uh,
it's wild. Yeah, I think it's cool. It helps me personally. So
and and this is again going into like other things, but it's like Russia. You're a Christian nation. I bet if you ask Putin in interviews, he probably says he's a Christian, right? Because it's a Christian nation. But what do you
right.
do? Like, what are we? What are Christian nations doing going to war? Just there's no way they believe
No, they're so, and it's so hard to, yeah,
it.
no, anyone that's like going to war is probably disconnected. It's the easiest
Yeah.
way to put it. Yeah. Because
Oh
war,
my.
yeah, war, I mean, it might be natural for animals to fight, but not like we're doing here, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, like
Right.
that's not natural. But I don't know. I don't personally think so. I think that a lot of the soldiers are being manipulated. Um, it's not like anyone really wants that. Uh, yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole thing has been extremely overwhelming too. Like that's
Well, that's why I try to push this message as much as possible, because every single one of those people pushing the buttons is caught up in a fractal of delusion.
Right.
They've been taught that that's the right thing to do, and that they're going to have some type of success for doing it. Like if the soldier literally thought that it was, there's soldiers doing what they think is right, and I'm not saying that they're dumb or they're wrong. It's just what they've been shown and what they've been taught. It's the flow of space they've existed within. They haven't seen they haven't seen a bigger picture.
Have
Uh,
you ever? It's so true. Have you? I'm sure you've seen. Maybe not. Have you seen that famous clip from Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator?
no, probably not. No, I don't know. I would
Um,
know. Yeah.
but yeah, but it's so great. He plays like a dictator type character, and he talks about basically how the power is not with dictators. That dictators will die, but the power will return to the people, and the power has always been with the people. And that people are innately good, and they need to see that within themselves and stop being played basically by dictators.
That's kind of what I'm saying, or like, yeah, what I'm hinting towards is that like people are naturally good, and typically they're manipulated into doing bad things, because they're gonna get some type of success, like money or security, for doing these things that they know in their heart are wrong to do.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Dude, I'm all on board with the good things that are happening, whatever that means. But I like you said, it's unavoidable. It's happening. So the most we can do is continue to just be true to ourselves, right? I think that's the most powerful thing is if people are true to themselves, that people recognize that and that resonates, and people go,
Well, that's what's
I want
happening.
some of that.
Exactly. That I think that you just nailed it right there. Like what, and so I've even had like people like email me, what can we do? What can we do? I was like, love your family, love the people next to you. That's the most you can
Yes.
do. It really is. Yeah.
It's so true, and it's so fulfilling and real, and that's what we want at the end of the day. But we're told not to want those things, or to want other
Yeah.
things that are more important. Dating around is more important than spending time with people you love, whatever. Which
Yeah,
is
no,
just
it's
so not
weird.
true.
It's weird. Yeah, no, and everybody has their own ways, right? So for me, and that's where it's like my greatest stresses or problems are come when I've tried to actually like really convince someone, and it's like you can't ever convince
Mm,
someone the truth. It's just like you can't free someone of doubt. Only they can remove it. Only they can, like, yeah, what's true is what's true to you. I mean, everybody has their own opinion of truth, you
right.
know, and everybody's at like different levels of letting go, um, and that's where you have to be able to, you have to like have that higher mind essentially, and like understand that everybody's at different levels, and that's where that compassion and understanding really comes into it too,
Absolutely.
and the
But I think just
tolerance. Yeah,
so many people are stepping into it right now, though. Like we said, it was my whole life, it was hard to find people like that, but more people than ever right now are stepping into it, which is just like an amazing, beautiful thing. Um, but I can't wait to see what happens. I'm so optimistic. Um, I just can't help but be optimistic because I think love is a million times more powerful than anything else that's going on right now.
it is. And not to keep going for too much longer, we've already been going for like 3 hours, but like fear will make you act quick, but love will make those actions last forever. So it's like the media uses fear a lot of times and stuff, and those things are like quick pacings, but like they're not sustainable. Like the actions that come from love are sustainable. Um, just a thought. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Let's end it there.
yeah, let's do it.
Alexei, it was
Let,
great speaking to you.
yeah, good speaking with you too. And let me know if you want to chat again. If you want to join Artis and Tony maybe and I on chat or something.
Would love that. Just send me an email. We'll exchange numbers. I am on anytime, man.
Cool. Yeah, let's keep in touch. We'll do it soon. Yeah.
All right. Take care, man.
Awesome. Have a good one.
See ya.
Yeah.